On a dark, cool night on Tianmen Mountain in Xinjiang in northwest China, it was unexpectedly crowded. The men with torches seemed to be searching for something in these distant lands. The young man who's been there for half a month has been hiding in the cave, hiding from the others. It seems he may have discovered something of value. In his hands was a manuscript written in strange symbols. It appeared to be authentic writings. They contained the secret technique of a swordmaster. It could be used to become a truly invincible warrior. The man with the scar on his face wished to use them himself, but his part of the Dantian body that contained chi was damaged, so he sealed the manuscript and ate it safely hidden inside. The warrior swallowed the ancient writing and wished he had brought water to drink. That's when he was called out. It turned out that someone had missed him and was looking for him. It was the head of the Golden Dragon Clan and a member of the Martial Arts Alliance named Mo Yong-su with Elder Baek Wei-hyang. They guessed that the blood cult spy had found what they were all after. The man turned to them and said that the manuscript was hidden in a safe place. He would gladly give it to them if they kept their promise. The elder clarified whether it was true that the warrior wanted to get rid of the bloodworm that was in his chest in exchange for the manuscript. However, they had no need to fulfill this request. Mo Yong-su took up his sword. Even if the man was rid of the bloodworm, he was not destined to live in peace because there was nowhere to go back to. It was Seo Un-hui of the Shining Earth clan. When Qi raged in his body and Dantian was destroyed, the warrior was banished. 10 years ago, he was kidnapped and placed in the chest of a bloodworm. From that moment on, he was forced to submit to the blood cult. Seo Un-hui didn't expect them to know everything about him. He tried to negotiate with them somehow. Only Mo Yong-su had no intention of doing so and pointed his sword towards the warrior. He only needed the ancient records. The young man replied that the manuscript was hidden in a secret place that only he knew about. Seo Un-hui insisted that the head of the Golden Dragon Clan help him in exchange for the writings. All he wanted to do was just to live his life in peace. The warrior didn't want to belong to any clan. Hearing this, the elder laughed. He noted the young man's cunning. At that instant, Mo Yong-su pierced through Seo Un-hui's body. He smiled, assuming that the manuscript was inside his body. In panic, the warrior cried out in pain. Could it be that they were not going to fulfill the terms of the treaty from the beginning and wanted to destroy him? Seo Un-hui couldn't stand on his feet and fell backwards right onto the stone floor. Smirking, Mo Yong-su said that he was destined to die back when he became a spy. Along with Seo Un-hui's flesh, the sword also pierced the ancient scroll hidden inside him. When the killer realized this, he was horrified. He couldn't let the writing be lost. Suddenly, he saw blue fire enveloping Seo Un-hui's body. It was consuming the warrior, but no one felt the heat. As he sank into oblivion, Seo Un-hui closed his eyes and lost touch with reality. He only hoped that he would be reborn to a different fate. Suddenly, the warrior felt a chill on his face. Someone had played a trick on him by splashing cold water on his face while he slept. As Seo Un-hui jumped up and awakened from his sleep, he heard the laughter of two powerful and strong guys standing right in front of him. The young man had no idea where he was. The body belonged to him, but there were no scars, cuts, or burns. This was where they called him a pathetic donkey. Seo Un-hui recognized that painfully familiar voice. They were brothers Sung Ja-baek and Sung Woo-hyun, the self-proclaimed Hunan Dao. They were once destined to become the black and white ghosts of the blood cult. Seo Un-hui wondered why they were so young. He was also so young. He looked at himself in the mirror in surprise. Sung Ja-baek, with a bucket in his hands, asked what his comrade was so surprised about. Thinking that Seo Un-hui was drunk, one of the Hunan Dao kicked him in the back. The young man fell off the bed he was sitting on. The brothers bent over him and demanded some money. At first, Seo Un-hui thought it was just a dream, but now he was in real pain. He stood up and grabbed Sun Woo-hyun by the chest and asked him what date today was. He got nervous and tried to pull away. The boy repeated his question. Sung Woo-hyun demanded to be released. His brother said that today was August 9th of the 11th year of the 60-year cycle. Finally, Seo Un-hui realized that he was in the past. He was exactly 10 years away from his death. Sung Ja-baek twisted his finger at his temple and rebuked him for being too drunk. But Seo Un-hui was not embarrassed at all. On the contrary, he happily threw his arms around Sung Woo-hyun's neck and hugged him. He thought that his comrade had gone crazy and tried unsuccessfully to break free from his embrace because Seo Un-hui's clothes were wet and cool. At that time, masked men were approaching the settlement. They clearly had bad intentions. They knocked on houses, disturbing the sleep of civilians, and took their lives in cold blood. The villains spared neither old men nor women. Many innocent people fell at their hands that day. Seo Woon-hui was looking through his things. He was sure that he had a chance to save himself, and he couldn't let it go. Sung Woo-hyun kept trying to get money from him, but the guy didn't seem to hear him. Seo Woon-hui told the brothers to run away right away. Then Sun Ja-baek clenched his fists, intending to force him. Finally, Seo Woon-hui found the Sword of Sodom among his belongings. It was the only thing that reminded him of his mother. He was very sorry when he lost it, but now it was as if fate had given him a chance to get this memorabilia back. Suddenly, Seo Woon-hui heard someone screaming. It wasn't coming from outside, but from inside his head. Poor guy almost went deaf. Turns out his brothers heard him too. It was a cry for help. The young man realized that it was time to get out of here, or they would be in trouble. The twins looked out the window. From their reactions, something unimaginable was happening there. They were confused and didn't know what to do. Seo Woon-hui pushed them aside to see what was going on. Seo Woon-hui looked out through a gap in the shutters and saw the people of the blood cult carrying out their judgment. There were almost no living inhabitants of the settlement left on the street. It was truly a horrible sight. On this day, Seo Woon-hui was going to be kidnapped. The brothers did not understand what was happening outside and asked who all these aliens were. They wondered if their settlement had been attacked by bandits. Seo Woon-hui explained that they were cultists and needed to run away from them right now. Sung Woo-hyun and Sung Ja-baek couldn't believe their ears because they all thought the cultists didn't exist for a long time. Seo Woon-hui said he was leaving and left them with no answer. Even if they didn't manage to escape, they would at least become martial artists, which wasn't bad either. Seo Woon-hui remembered that 10 years ago there were 4 of them. But who was the 4th? Of course it was Ah Seong, the youngest of them and a loyal friend. He had to be rescued. Seo Woon-hui rushed to the room where Ah Seong was sleeping. He was very afraid that he wouldn't be able to warn him in time. Besides, he had to hide somewhere. The guy burst into the room and shouted at Ah Seong to get up immediately. The frightened boy didn't even immediately realize who was here and what he wanted from him. Seo Woon-hui grabbed his hand and dragged him along, promising to explain everything on the way. As he left the building, he said that the settlement had been attacked by cultists, and they needed a good hiding place. They ran away, encountering people still alive on their way. And Sung asked why they ran to the center of the settlement instead of to the exit. But it was impossible to leave the center of the settlement because they were under siege. In that case, the boy suggested going back to the room and hiding in the closet. But Seo Woon-hui objected that it would be too obvious. Those who hid in cupboards and large jars were very unlucky. They were immediately discovered and deprived of their lives. So the friends needed to hide where no one would look for them. But that wasn't so easy. Suddenly, Seo Woon-hui had an epiphany. The safest place to go is the common restroom. Ah Sung asked if there was any other place that was less smelly. He really didn't want to get dirty, even if his life depended on it. Without saying a word, Seo Woon-hui pushed him into the latrine and closed the door behind him. At first, he wanted to hide here himself, but in the end, he gave this safe place to a comrade. Next to the latrine was a small stable. Seo Woon-hui turned around and saw the horse. The guy untied him and let him loose. He himself took shelter in the straw that served as food for the local horses. Seo Woon-hui had his sword in his pocket. Even if the cultists found him with their powers, he would resist. Suddenly, he heard a voice asking him not to touch the hilt of the sword with his dirty hands. Seo Woon-hui froze, not understanding where the sound was coming from. It was as if his mother's sword itself was speaking to him, if he was possessed by a ghost of some kind. But the voice clearly said that he was the Sword of Sodom himself. But no one had been able to hear him until now. At that second, a small figure separated from the sword. It was a girl with blonde hair and radiant eyes. It was the avatar of the sword. Not every mortal was allowed to see it, but Seo Woon-hui was honored to see it. The boy was in a state of mild shock. At first, he couldn't believe his eyes and ears, thinking it was all a hallucination. As it turned out, the sword could read its wielder's thoughts in close proximity. Meanwhile, someone was approaching the stables. Seo Woon-hui asked the avatar to be quiet. He couldn't think straight with all the noise. The masked man was looking for survivors to carry out his sentence. There was no one around, but the villain decided to get closer to the stable and investigate. Seo Woon-hui grabbed his sword. He didn't know how he was going to act, but he wasn't going to give up. The avatar asked him if Seo Woon-hui could attack the attacker. He was strong enough to do so, but did he have the courage to do so? His heart was racing. It was just like when Mo Yong-soo killed him and took away his life. The full moon shone in the sky. It was the last night of someone's life. Seo Woon-hui felt that someone was leaning over his hiding place and would soon be discovered. With a jerk, he stabbed the stranger in the chest with his sword. It wasn't fear, it was excitement. Seo Woon-hui gave himself a promise to endure no matter what. The sword avatar was surprised at Seo Woon-hui's unexpected agility and even praised him. The sword had never had such a high opinion of a warrior before. Seo Woon-hui often partied with the Song brothers, giving him a reputation as a slacker. The annoyed Seo Woon-hui ordered the sword to be silent. He could have just ignored the magic blade, but he remembered that it could read his mind. Meanwhile, the situation was heating up. Seo Woon-hui knew that the blood cult warriors were moving in threes, which meant that there were 2 more around. A new hiding place had to be found. Sword spoke again through the avatar, warning that one of the cultists was standing right behind. The young man instantly turned around. Every second of delay would cost him his life. There was indeed a man standing behind him. His voice was steely as he said that he didn't want to interfere with the unfolding action. It wasn't easy to spot him at once. He was quietly watching in the shadows under the roof of the building. Avatar and Seo Woon-hui froze in indecision, not knowing what to do. Meanwhile, the cultist clarified whether Seo Woon-hui had finished with his comrade. The fight was short and strategic. The boy tensed, trying to figure out how long he could have been followed. But it was the belt around the cultist's waist that caught his eye the most. The brown color was the hallmark of a mid-ranked warrior. With his current combat skills, it was impossible to defeat him. The avatar enthusiastically praised the guy after reading his thoughts on his determination to fight to the end, although Seo Woon-hui was clearly overestimating himself. Sword didn't know that what he was facing wasn't just Seo Woon-hui, but a wiser and more mature version of him in a young man's body. The cultist took a glance at his figure and assumed that he was a mid-level fighter. He offered him a deal. If Seo Woon-hui surrenders voluntarily, he'll live. But the guy interrupted him, hinting that the cultist wasn't going to take his life anyway since he was talking about skill levels. Seo Woon-hui decided to hit the cultist hard, confidently stating that he wouldn't dare to attack for fear of backlash. The cultist couldn't believe his ears, surprised at such audacity. The sword avatar asked in horror why Seo Woon-hui was provoking his opponent. The guy did it intentionally to appear cocky. The cultist felt bluffed, realizing that the guy was trying his best to avoid the fight. Suddenly, the stranger drew his sword and struck, slicing the hair off of Seo Woon-hui's head. His dexterity was not enough to repel the attack. He only raised his hand, trying to counterattack, but the cultist intercepted it. Lifting Seo Woon-hui into the air, he stated that the movement was too slow, although the counterattack could be quite accurate. The cultist tightened his grip on his wrist so much that the sword fell out of his hand, but the young man managed to catch it with his other hand. The stranger ordered him to follow him, but Seo Woon-hui had no intention of obeying at all. He suddenly swung his sword straight at the cultist's face. He only turned his head away from the blow, but there was still a cut on his cheek. Glaring angrily at Seo Woon-hui, the cultist cursed foully and struck the guy in a rage so that he flew several meters away. Getting up from the ground, Seo Woon-hui chided himself for being overconfident. He had so hoped that the cultist wouldn't be able to dodge the blow. Now he had no choice but to face the enemy. The avatar of the sword offered his help in the fight, without which it would be difficult to defeat the enemy. Still, Seo Woon-hui had no idea how to help him. The avatar asked him how he planned to proceed since the fight was now inevitable. Seo Woon-hui was thinking frantically. He realized that after hitting the cultist's left eye, he needed to attack from this side where the view was no longer so wide. Touching the wound on his face, the cultist warned that he had tried to be polite, but now there would be no mercy. He drew his sword and prepared to fight. The cultist rushed forward, intending to tear Seo Woon-hui to pieces. He was filled with rage. The boy was horrified to realize that it was the deadly blood blade technique, one of the blood cult's most sophisticated techniques. The cultist's movements were so fast that Seo Woon-hui could barely catch them. They were aimed at exhausting the opponent. While Seo Woon-hui was pondering his defense, the sword avatar prompted him to strike from the front. Lightning following this advice, he blocked his opponent's sword. The cultist fell to the ground without expecting a fight. Seo Woon-hui was surprised by this and stood still, waiting for further developments. The Avatar praised Seo Eun-hui, not forgetting to mention that without his help, the young man would hardly be alive. Seo Eun-hui realized that the Avatar was able to anticipate his opponent's strikes and tell him how to act in battle. It turned out that the sword chatter wasn't so useless. Seo Eun-hui reasonably apologized to the Avatar and consciously asked for his help. The Avatar recognized that the need for his support was now obvious, for it was the first time in 47 years that he had been heard and seen by a human being. In order to successfully fight together, they needed to synchronize. Since Seo Eun-hui had already counterattacked once, the cultist would not come close to his sword again. However, the Avatar suggested provoking the enemy again. Meanwhile, the cultist wondered how Seo Eun-hui was able to block his last strike. He couldn't believe that he had learned the art of the sword so quickly. With the firm intention of finishing off Seo Eun-hui, the cultist rushed straight towards him. The sword Avatar suggested that Seo Eun-hui block the cultist's blows and stall for time. To do so, he had to anticipate the trajectory of his opponent's sword. The cultist swung his weapon so fast that it was hard to follow his movements. The Avatar prompted when a distraction was being conducted and when the main strike would follow. The cultist's left eye could not see well because of the blood that blocked the view. Seo Eun-hui strived to get into that blind spot. It was the only chance for salvation. The Avatar warned that a blind counterattack could be inaccurate but sudden. He had to wait for the cultist's horizontal lunge. This moment was already close. Calling Seo Eun-hui a rat, the opponent attacked, already anticipating the counterattack. But this time, the cultist could not be taken by surprise. He was a skilled warrior after all. Seo Eun-hui received a powerful blow on his arm and crouched down to the ground. The pain seemed to pierce his entire limb, stripping him of his defenses. The cultist smirked and called him a pathetic third-rate brat. With those words, the stranger prepared to deliver the final crushing blow. That was the horizontal lunge. As Seo Eun-hui prepared himself, when the cultist was at arm's length, the guy swung his sword. Not expecting such a turn, the stranger had time to think how this worthless fighter had managed such a trick. That was the last thought, because a second later, his head was separated from his body. Seo Eun-hui was overwhelmed by his success over such a powerful opponent. The sword Avatar asked if everything was all right, and the young man answered in the affirmative. If Seo Eun-hui hadn't pretended to break his arm, he wouldn't have been able to put the enemy's guard down. The hologram of the sword cheered, congratulating the young man on his victory. It was not a full sword, but only a short sword, and it had performed well in battle. The Avatar asked embarrassedly as he wiped the enemy's blood from the blade. The Avatar asked embarrassedly for the enemy's blood to be wiped off the blade. Suddenly, the hologram shouted a warning that someone was coming at them from behind. Seo Eun-hui turned around, but he didn't react in time and received a powerful punch to the face. It was the third cultist who was searching for his comrades. He walked closer to Seo Eun-hui, who was lying on the ground, and was very surprised that such a frail teenager had taken the lives of two, not the weakest warriors. A few minutes later, Seo Eun-hui found himself in front of the cultist council hastily assembled in the ruined settlement. His ID card was examined with undisguised interest, and soon the cultists learned his name and that the young man was from Yiyang district in Luoyang City. Seo Eun-hui, a member of the Shining Earth clan, was renowned for his valor, but after the destruction of his Dantian, he became an outcast, lost in the abyss of oblivion. One of the cultists offered to take the young man in and make a spy out of him. The others frowned incredulously and objected. Why would they want a fighter without Dantian who couldn't even pass the training? They thought he was pathetic and worthless. His humiliated state and battered body only increased their contempt. Seo Eun-hui felt fear clenching his heart and couldn't hold back his tears. The cultists, deciding his fate, came to the conclusion that it would be more prudent to take his life. The young man gathered and tearfully begged for his life. He promised to do all their bidding and was willing to be their puppet, even if it meant falling back into the darkness of the blood cult. Conflicting feelings raged inside him. He had so hoped he could avoid this. His hands were tied behind his back, and he felt the tight rope become a symbol of his captivity. Seo Eun-hui wondered why his sword was silent, as if he had lost the ability to speak. The Avatar was nowhere to be found, and the young man's heart clenched with anxiety. His gaze fell on the sword in the cultist's hands, and as he looked at it, the leader marveled at how such a loser had managed to take the lives of two of his fighters. Perhaps there was still a spark of his clan's heritage in him, but Seo Un-hui realized that he could not escape serving the Blood Clan. He had to survive to organize an escape, but with each passing moment, this hope was becoming more and more elusive. Finally, the cultist captain spoke words that took the young man's breath away. They would not take him with them. The world collapsed in an instant. The unfortunate man desperately begged for mercy again. His voice trembled with fear, and his eyes glistened with tears. But there wasn't an ounce of mercy in the eyes of the cultists, only a cold determination to wipe his existence from the face of the earth. Seo Un-hui was waiting for payback. A sword loomed over his head, ready to decide his fate at any second. There was no chance of escape left for the boy. He tried to find some way out, but in his situation it was almost impossible. The cultist captain watched with a chuckle as Seo Un-hui desperately searched for escape like a hunted animal scurrying for shelter. Perhaps if he had begged more persistently, he might have escaped death. The young man did not notice that his efforts were only mocked. Suddenly, the sword of one of the strangers standing nearby caught his attention. Seo Un-hui had seen it somewhere before. This unusual sword with a white decoration on the hilt belonged to the fourth blood star, a mighty warrior whose name was awe-inspiring. Seeing this sword, Seo Un-hui began to beat his head on the ground in despair, bowing down to it and praising the blood demon. His words, full of fear and awe, caused a whisper among the cultists. Could it be that the fourth star was really in their midst? The captain, sensing the tension in the air, turned around, and seeing the powerful figure standing behind him, bowed to her in respect. In his past life, Seo Un-hui had not had the honor of meeting any of the 7 honorable blood stars. However, he had heard legends that the leaders of the blood cult were able to disguise themselves as common warriors to stealthily observe units. Fourth star stepped closer to Seo Un-hui and ordered him to raise his head. The young man courageously and boldly met his gaze. Before him stood Do Chanho, one of the blood cult's most skilled warriors, whose name inspired fear and respect. He asked Seo Un-hui how he managed to recognize his presence. Seo Un-hui gathered his wits and replied that he recognized Do Changho by his sword. The white decoration on the hilt was a reminder of a faithful white stallion. Do Changho noted the young man's eyesight in surprise, but then his eyes became wary. Only a member of the blood cult could know this information. Seo Un-hui panicked. Suddenly, it was clear to him that what he was saying might cause mistrust. The situation was heating up, and he realized that he would have to get out of it somehow and lie. Then Seo Un-hui lied that he had the blood of the blood cult in his veins. It was the first thing that came to his mind. The young man made up a story full of drama. Quiet whispers resounded around him. Could it be that there were descendants of the blood cult in the Shining Earth clan? He said that his grandfather had once participated in the Great Ortho-Heretic Battle as a low-ranked warrior in the Blood Wolves unit. After being wounded, he began to wander in search of a safe place to settle with his daughter. So his grandfather ended up in Luoyang City, but his suffering was not over. His body and soul were scarred. The daughter had to become a servant of the Shining Earth clan. She met a boy there, and Seo Un-hui was born. Du Changho stood in front of him, listening incredulously to this seemingly coherent story. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword. Seo Un-hui could feel the tension rising in the air. The fourth star did not take his eyes off of him and ordered him to speak further. The boy panicked again, but went on with the legend. When he was very young, his grandfather taught him martial arts and passed on all his wisdom. Seo Un-hui continued to develop his story, outlining the harsh reality of his training. Every time he complained about the harsh conditions, his grandfather would bring up the captain of the Blood Wolf Squad, No Juman, and his son, No Sun Gu. These names were like symbols of strength and fortitude, and my grandfather emphasized that if the captain's son could endure such trials, then Seo Un-hui could too. Seo Un-hui said that his grandfather warned him that the blood cult would get to them sooner or later. At that moment, he noticed Do Changho's hesitation. A glimmer of confidence seemed to flicker in his eyes. Du Changho leaned towards Seo Un-hui. His gaze became serious. It seemed like he was about to ask some important question. But at this moment, the cultist captain couldn't help but interrupt their conversation, urging everyone not to believe a word this brat said. However, Do Changho sternly reprimanded him for interrupting Fourth Star's speech. Seo Un-hui was amazed at how Do Changho instantly besieged the captain with a display of his power and influence. The captain, realizing his folly, bowed before him and begged for leniency. His pride had clearly been trampled. Du Changho returned to his conversation with Xiao Wunhui. He understood that the young man had taken the lives of 2 cultists in self-defense, but he still had one question. Why didn't Xiao Wunhui reveal his true identity to the captain right away? He bowed his head and confessed that he was only afraid of being punished, despite being a member of the blood cult. After these words, suddenly burst into a ringing laughter that broke the ominous silence in the settlement. With a stern look once again, he said that he understood the young man's motives. Given that Xiao Wunhui's grandfather was a cultist, he was one himself. Du Changho pointed out that they had just almost lost an important descendant of an ancient clan. He asked Xiao Wunhui to join the blood cult. The young man replied that he would honorably accept the offer. Xiao Wunhui felt disappointed as he said those words. He survived, but still found himself trapped, where old shackles and new obligations were woven into one tangled knot. Xiao Wunhui felt the ropes binding his arms loosen, releasing him from the weight of his captivity. He crouched to the ground and, unable to hold back a surge of emotion, began to praise the blood demon, calling upon its strength and power. Du Changho, watching this scene, solemnly congratulated the young man for joining the blood cult. With these words, he turned to leave, but stopped halfway. Since they had found a descendant of the ancient clan, Xiao Wunhui could now count on the fulfillment of his wish. Xiao Wunhui felt excitement and wariness creep into his heart. This could be a blessing or a trap. Thoughts swirled in his head, and he knew he had to use this moment wisely so as not to give away his true intentions. He looked down and gathered his thoughts and said that he would like his short sword back. The words were quiet, but they hid all his pain and nostalgia. That sword was the only memory he had of his mother. Du Changho was surprised when he heard this request. He didn't expect Xiao Wunhui to ask for such a thing. Fourth Star demanded that the captain hand him the sword. He hesitated, for the sword had the blood of 2 cultists on it. However, Du Changho had already reached for his sword, prompting the captain to act faster. Not wanting to incur the wrath of his commander again, the captain gritted his teeth and complied. He handed over the short sword, and the man finally took it in his hands. Du Changho took the sword out of its sheath and began to scrutinize it. It was indeed a good weapon of fine craftsmanship. Du Changho told Xiao Wunhui that he would have to pay for spilling the blood of 2 cultists. With those words, Du Changho broke the blade of the short sword with just 2 fingers without expending any effort. At the same instant, Du Changho, as if demonstrating his power, threw the rest of his sword towards Xiao Wunhui. The sword slammed into the ground right in front of his face with a thud, leaving a sense of tension and menace in the air. This seemed like a warning for the future, so that Xiao Wunhui would use his weapon more judiciously from now on. Xiao Wunhui took hold of the hilt of the sword, sticking out of the ground, and looked at the 4th star carefully. Even though he had obtained the sword suspicion from Du Changho, still hovered in the air. Meanwhile, the cultists began to leave the village. Xiao Wunhui realized that he had to join them. But first of all, he had to talk to the avatar of the sword. This connection to the sword was important to him. Feeling the cold metal of the sword in his hands, the young man felt joy that he had managed to retrieve Sodom's sword. But that feeling was replaced by anxiety when the enraged avatar appeared before him. His hair was shorter, making him look more intimidating. Xiao Wunhui took a deep breath and tried to calm him down, promising that he would take the sword to the blacksmith to restore it as soon as possible. The avatar asked if Xiao Wunhui really belonged to the blood cult. He knew he had to be careful with the answer. The young man replied that it wasn't quite true, but it wasn't quite a lie either. He said it with a balance between honesty and caution. Sword Avatar Sodom noticed that Xiao Wunhui was troubled for a moment. His gaze was filled with understanding and doubt. Xiao Wunhui gathered his thoughts and, looking at the avatar in the eyes, prepared to make a decisive move. Hoping that the revelation would make a difference, he confessed that he had come here from the future. Sodom tilted her head and looked at him incredulously. Meanwhile, Du Changho was still suspicious. He ordered the cultist captain to send someone to Luoyang to check on Xiao Wunhui's lineage. Even though Xiao Wunhui had gotten his sword back, Du Changho still doubted that the guy had told him the truth. He noticed the young man watching his every move. It was the kind of observation that was characteristic of spies. Du Changho, noticing the captain's wariness, advised him to be careful with the new recruit, for he knew too much about the blood cult. Meanwhile, Xiao Wunhui was led away to the rest of the prisoners, and the cultists began their journey. In the wagon carrying the survivors of the massacre, the mental dialogue between the sword avatar and Seo Un-hui continued. Sodom still couldn't believe that Seo Un-hui had traveled back 10 years after his death and gained the ability to see and hear her. Looks like he really was a descendant of the blood cult. Otherwise, how could he have such extraordinary abilities? The avatar seemed to be playing a joke on Seo Un-hui. It looked like he had gone back 10 years to fall into the hands of the cultists again. If he had left Aseong and hid in the latrine himself, it might have gone smoothly. Those words hurt Seo Un-hui. He couldn't leave Aseong in the lurch. Ah Sung was the only one who treated him with kindness in his past life. He saved Seo Un-hui at the cost of his life, so he owed the boy a debt of gratitude. Sodom, continuing to push Seo Un-hui to think with irony, asked if he was going to be an errand boy for the cultists again. After all, he now had an undeniable advantage. Seo Un-hui thought about these words. He was aware of the many events that were about to happen. The other prisoners were resting around them, immersed in sleep, and none of them could hear the conversation between Sudom and Seo Un-hui, for they were communicating mentally. Seo Un-hui thought about his stay in the blood cult. He realized that he needed to learn various fighting techniques as much as possible in order to survive. This was his only chance to break free. However, with Dantian destroyed, his options were limited. The avatar, sensing his confusion, replied that if he mastered Kai again, Sodom could teach him a martial art. It was a special short sword technique that required precision and surprise. At first, Seo Un-hui brushed off the idea of learning a martial art with a short sword. In his mind, the concept seemed impossible. Sodom, sensing his distrust, was clearly angry. The short sword was not just a weapon, but a tool that required skill and precision. Seo Un-hui realized that he had hurt the avatar's feelings. He realized that despite his doubts, he had no choice but to listen to the lecture. Seo Un-hui's hand suddenly lit up with blue fire, and he froze, unable to move. The flames quickly engulfed his entire body, but he felt no pain. At that moment, he felt that he was in a different reality. There was no one and nothing around, only a vast space filled with silence. Seo Un-hui tried to understand what was happening to him. His mind was flitting between fear and surprise. Suddenly, he heard a voice that seemed both near and far at the same time. The voice said that the universe would open with the acquisition of the sword heart. These words echoed in the void, and Seo Un-hui penetrated his consciousness. A moment later, he was back in the wagon, surrounded by sleeping captives. The blue flames disappeared, but their heat was still felt in his body. Seo Un-hui, still stunned by what had happened, turned to the avatar. He asked if Sudom had seen the blue fire. Meanwhile, she was angry that Seo Un-hui didn't listen to her martial arts lecture. She replied that she hadn't seen anything, and her voice was full of resentment and disappointment. Without waiting for an answer, Sodom turned away and hid inside the sword. Lastly, the avatar said that he wouldn't bother Seo Un-hui again until they arrived. However, the journey was long. The journey took almost half a month. Lying on the straw, Seo Un-hui thought about what had happened. His hand looked ordinary, but there was an unknown power in it that he hadn't realized before. He began to slowly examine his fingers, trying to remember the moment he came across the secret writing. Seo Un-hui, still immersed in thinking about his hand and searching for the blue flame, suddenly felt the cart come to an abrupt halt. He raised his head, and at that moment, the door to the wagon swung open, letting in the bright sunlight that blinded his eyes. A menacing voice that sounded like thunder ordered them to stand up and go outside. He also advised them to keep still, or they would be in trouble. The boy slowly stood up and rubbed his eyes as he walked outside. As soon as his eyes adjusted to the sunlight, he realized he was in the Valley of Blood. He was ordered to line up with the other prisoners. Seo Un-hui looked at his companions, among whom he saw several anxious faces. The sword avatar appeared and asked in a sleepy voice what was going on here. It was one of the blood cult bases that also served as a training camp for kidnapped children. In front of them stood a stern-looking man with a sullen expression. His name was Gu Sang-woon, and he was the person in charge of training at this camp. Seo Un-hui suddenly heard a familiar voice calling him from behind. He turned around and saw Jae Baek and Woo Hyun grinning at him. They made fun of him, saying that even though Seo Un-hui tried to escape, he still ended up here with them. Seo Un-hui felt joy fill his heart at the sight of familiar faces, despite the fact that they were all in such a terrible situation. Jay Beck noticed that Seo Un-hui's hands weren't tied and looked at him curiously. He asked his comrade about it. The young man, realizing that this was not the right time for explanations, replied that it was a long story, and now was not the time to discuss it. Captain O, standing on a dais with a stern expression on his face, began to speak, urging the captives to listen to him carefully. Behind him was a rostrum, and his voice was loud and commanding. When he counted to 5, the prisoners would have to run to this podium. Whoever fails this test will be punished immediately. Some of the captives, panicked, began to ask Captain O to untie them. Seo Un-hui, sensing the rising tension, immediately started running ahead of the others. The twins tried to understand what was going on and shouted for Seo Un-hui to tell them what to do, but he had already left them far behind, rushing towards the podium. Jae Baek and Woo Hyun followed Seo Un-hui and looked around as they ran. They were horrified when they saw that those who hadn't escaped were being massacred. When Seo Un-hui reached the podium, he bowed to the captain, feeling his heart pounding with excitement. The twins noticed that this was the second time Seo Un-hui had predicted the future, and it made them wonder about his special ability. They agreed to henceforth listen to his advice to be successful in everything. Gu Sang-woon was surprised and intrigued as he watched Seo Un-hui bow before him. He didn't expect the prisoner to show such respect. It seemed strange to him, and he couldn't help but share his thoughts with his assistant, who was standing nearby. She replied that it was probably the same guy who was a descendant of the blood cult that Captain O had warned them about. Meanwhile, the other surviving prisoners saw that Seo Un-hui had bowed his head to Gu Sang-woon and began to show respect as well. A sword avatar appeared and said that apparently Seo Un-hui was indeed a descendant of the blood cult, so he knew how to behave. Seo Un-hui, realizing the seriousness of the situation, did not want to arouse suspicion and wanted to avoid a show trial. He had no other choice. Gu Sang-woon took advantage of the moment to speak to the captives again. He said that those standing before him had been chosen to join the blood cult. This news caused an uproar among the captives. Some in the crowd protested, expressing discontent and fear of the unknown. Seo Un-hui watched this and lowered his head sadly. He knew that the discontent among the prisoners would not be ignored. It wouldn't be long before there would be a show of punishment for those who dared to object. He wanted to protect his comrades, but he didn't know how. Sodom was filled with anxiety and fear. She could not believe that the disgruntled could be taken away right in front of the other prisoners. At the same second, a cultist walked up to the troublemaker from behind and, without saying a word, struck him directly on the head. It was unexpected and cruel. This was how the blood cult instilled obedience and fear. There were shrieks in the crowd and people recoiled, realizing that this could happen to anyone. Sudam wondered how Seo Un-hui could survive in such an environment. She couldn't imagine how she could obey orders that could cost her life. The young man, noticing her surprise, sadly replied that he was just trying to survive by following the instructions without thinking about the consequences. At this moment, Gu Sang-woon, standing on a dais, proclaimed the beginning of the initiation ceremony. Looking over the crowd, he singled out Seo Un-hui and ordered him to come closer. The captain asked Seo Un-hui if he knew what was in the box in front of them. He replied that of course he knew, and that there were bloodworms in the box. Gu Sang-woon ordered him to explain to the others what it was. Seo Un-hui said it was a parasite that was implanted in the recruits to keep them loyal. Every 24 hours, an antidote had to be taken, or the worm would begin to devour its owner. Jia Bayek looked at Seo Un-hui in surprise and asked how he knew all this. Gu Sang-woon was satisfied with the blood cult member's answer. Jae Baek couldn't believe his ears when he heard that. He felt rage and anger rising inside him. So Seo Un-hui had been a spy for the blood cult all along. Jibek couldn't stop thinking about it. Sudam warned Seo Un-hui that he had been exposed. She could feel the tension in the air rising and realized that the situation was becoming critical. Gu Sang-woon ran his hand into the box of worms with a smirk and offered Seo Un-hui to be the first to be honored to join the cult. Seo Un-hui realized that he couldn't avoid this procedure. He knew that if he didn't consent, his life would end at that very moment. Gathering his thoughts, he thanked the captain for the honor. His voice sounded confident, but inside he felt excitement and trepidation. However, the boy asked for water to make it easier for him to swallow the worm. The cultists whispered amongst themselves that Seo Un-hui must have taken a liking to the commander. Some of them speculated that singling him out would be a sign of special favor. At this time, Seo Un-hui was swallowing the worm. Finally, he gave a eulogy to the blood demon. The commander nodded his head in satisfaction and looked at Seo Wun-hui approvingly. Now each of the other captives had to do the same. Sudom was stunned that Seo Wun-hui had lived with a worm inside him for 10 years. His chest filled with an unpleasant but familiar sensation, as if he was back to the days when everything had just begun. A second later, an unbearable pain pierced his body. It was like a fire was burning inside him, and he couldn't hold back a moan. The young man turned around and saw Captain O behind him, staring at him point blank. Could it have been his doing? Unable to stand on his feet, Seo Wun-hui fell to the ground. Captain O came closer and asked what was going on. Apparently, the worm in Seo Wun-hui's chest had gone wild, which shouldn't have happened. A descendant of the blood cult couldn't be so weak that the worm would incapacitate him. Seo Wun-hui was in a panic. The pain in his chest became unbearable, and he felt his strength leaving him. Gu Sung-woon asked Captain O if the recruit was okay. He must have awakened the worm while swallowing. But Seo Wun-hui couldn't make a mistake because this wasn't his first worm. He couldn't afford to show weakness, especially now. Captain O lifted Seo Wun-hui off the ground and said that he was about to calm the worm with a special technique. The boy was surprised when he asked if Captain O would do the honor himself. He replied that he wouldn't do it for Seo Wun-hui, and for the sake of the other recruits who were forced to witness this unpleasant incident. The cultist confidently ordered the boy to turn his back to him. Seo Wun-hui realized that Captain O was not the culprit behind his excruciating pain. The unpleasant sensation moved from his chest to his lower abdomen. The poor man was confused as he tried to convince the captain that he was feeling better. But he ordered him not to move, or the young man would only make himself worse by getting hit in the wrong place. The captain advised him to tense up. Completely desperate, Seo Wun-hui asked the captain to move farther away and leave him alone right now. Suddenly, the air rushed out of him with a loud sound, as if all the accumulated tension had been released. Captain O was startled to realize what had happened. The embarrassed Seo Wun-hui could only mumble that he had warned him about this. The young man felt a rush of shame and relief at the same time. There had never been such laughter in the Valley of Blood. Sudom laughed more than anyone else, making poor Seo Wun-hui blush. After such an embarrassment, Seo Wun-hui felt terrible. However, the guy no longer felt discomfort in his chest because of the bloodworm. Jabaik approached him, calling the guy a Blood Clan lowlife with disdain. He asked with a smirk what was next for them, as if he expected Seo Wun-hui to be able to predict the future. The boy replied irritably that he couldn't know everything in the world. His voice sounded confused and angry. However, Jabaik didn't seem like he was going to let it go. He resented the way Seo Wun-hui wanted to stand out from the rest. The young man didn't understand what he meant. He looked away, trying to concentrate on his own feelings and not give in to the provocation. Captain O caught their attention by saying that the prisoners would now undergo a rank evaluation test. Seo Wun-hui didn't understand why this particular captain was doing this. Behind him were caves, each containing a cult examiner. You had to show him all your skills. At the end of the test, the recruits would be assigned 3 ranks, high, medium, and low. Seo Wun-hui pulled himself together and decided that he would do his best. The blood cult was completely focused on abilities. Captain O wore the blue sash that distinguished the highest-ranked warriors. The best fighters will have the bloodworm removed from their chests. The recruits were visibly cheerful, their faces lit up with hope and expectation. However, only Seo Wun-hui realized that his comrades were imperceptibly turning into cultists at this very moment. Each of his rivals was willing to do anything for status and recognition in the Blood Clan. It made him uneasy. Captain O raised a red whistle to his lips. Seo Wun-hui realized that the competition was about to begin. Suddenly, a shrill whistle sounded. Seo Wun-hui covered his ears with his hands, unable to bear the sound. Jae-baek, who was standing next to him, wondered if he should do the same. A second later, all the recruits felt an unbearable pain in their chests. The whistling irritated the bloodworms inside, making them squirm. However, Seo Wun-hui didn't feel anything in his chest as if his worm was calm. This lack of pain only made him more anxious. He looked at his comrades who were squirming in fear and misery and couldn't understand why his own worm didn't react. Captain O continued his speech. The recruits who can't reach high rank will be forced to carry the bloodworm inside them for the rest of their lives. The twins exchanged determined glances. unwilling to accept such a cruel fate. The cultist ordered everyone to stand up and prepare for the task. Seo Wunhui's heart was pounding frantically, but there was no pain or anxiety in his chest. He felt a strange emptiness, as if his worm had fallen into a daze. Sodom suggested that maybe it had something to do with the guy plugging his ears while whistling, but it didn't actually have any effect on the worm. If Seo Unhui still had Dantian, he could easily check his senses and understand what was going on inside him. Jay Beck said he was going to win this competition to get rid of the worm. He was already looking forward to getting revenge on Seo Unhui. The young man could not understand what one of the twins was telling him and why he was going to take revenge on him. Captain O was about to name the first recruit to be tested. Without waiting, Jabek raised his hand in the air. He expressed his desire to be the first, and his voice sounded confident, and his eyes showed determination. Sodom whispered to Seo Unhui that apparently Jangbek was angry at the young man for not telling his comrade earlier about his affiliation with the blood cult. The captain beckoned Jabek closer, and he rushed forward. All eyes were on them. Jangbek tossed a phrase over his shoulder that he would now prove his superiority to Seo Unhui. His words were full of self-confidence. Unfortunately, the fighter didn't notice Captain O stand up, and with a lightning-fast reaction, he punched the insolent man in the face with his fist. Ja Baek thundered to the ground, and everyone froze. The cultist called him an idiot and scolded him for jumping out of his seat without orders. One of the twins still lay before the recruits knocked out by Captain O's powerful punch. Meanwhile, the cultist loudly announced Seo Wunhui's name, indicating that he was the one destined to be the first to pass the test. Seo Wunhui realized that since their last meeting, Captain O had harbored a grudge against him. The cultist mockingly asked the young man if the descendant of the blood cult was timid about the task. He assured him that there was no problem, and that he was honored by his attention. The boy had taken this test before and knew it was not an easy task. The rest of the prisoners filed out in order. In his previous life, another captain named Hai Gyum had conducted the competition. He was lucky because he had no skills at all and passed by a miracle. The sword avatar asked what rank the elephant had gotten in his past life. After all, he didn't even have Dantian. The young man replied that he was a low-ranked fighter. Such warriors are used as meat and for simple missions. Sodom was horrified to learn of this. Suddenly, Seo Wunhui heard a voice asking him if it was true that he had come from Luoyang. He knew who the voice belonged to. The man who was hiding in the shadows of the cave in his past life was Seo Unhui's direct commander. His name was No Sun Gu. Sudam asked him which squad he belonged to in his past life. Seo Unhui replied that he was a member of the Blood Wolves. The man repeated his question. Seo Wunhui realized that this was Captain O's way of trying to set up a confrontation. The young man gave his name and confirmed that he belonged to the Shining Earth clan from Luoyang. He also said he heard about Captain No Sun Gu from his grandfather. The captain threateningly said that it was a blatant lie. Unveiling his sword, the cultist added that there had never been a person of the same description as Seo Unhui's grandfather in his squad. Preparing to attack, No Sun Gu demanded that the impostor confess who he really was. At this moment, Seo Wunhui was confused. The commander grabbed him by the throat with his hand. He said that he didn't value his life at all because he had lied to so many people. But Sun Gu had belonged to the Blood Wolves led by his father since he was a child. He remembered each warrior by name. Seo Unhui's grandfather was not among them. Sodom was worried about the boy and advised him to get a short sword, but that would only make the young man's situation worse. He wanted to talk first and settle the matter peacefully. Still holding Seo Unhui by the throat, the commander drew his sword with his free hand and prepared to strike. Sodom warned him of an impending attack. The boy still had to use his short sword in self-defense. However, the commander's sword skill level was much higher. Seo Wunhui couldn't keep up with his quick movements. Seeing the young man's intention, the commander kicked him in the chest. The boy flew to the opposite wall of the cave. The frightened sword avatar begged him to get to his feet. Luckily, the blow wasn't that strong, and Seo Unhui wasn't hurt. Sodom shouted that the commander was about to attack again. The young man felt dizzy and foggy. It turned out he had hit the back of his head on a stone wall. The sword avatar ordered him to defend himself by directing his blows. However, Seo Wunhui was not strong enough to repel all the attacks. He found himself back on the cold floor of the cave. The blow was so hard that the sword flew far away from the young man. But Sun Gu kept beating him. Finally, he stepped his foot on Seo Wunhui's chest and ordered him to answer who he was. The boy was glad for the brief respite. He decided to hit a nerve with the captain. Seo Unhui reminded him of his long-lost sister. The man was surprised that the recruit had managed to find out so much information about him. However, everyone knew that his younger sister was long gone. Seo Unhui shouted that Sehua was alive. That was the name of the commander's sister. She was kidnapped, but survived. The body that was found and presented to her family was not hers. The boy offered to negotiate. The captain glanced at the short sword Sodom had nearby. The man was surprised that this recruit knew his sister's name. It didn't seem like a bluff. He stuck his sword next to Seo Unhui's head, but Songgu was willing to listen to him. He asked where Sehua was now. The young man got a chance to breathe fully and coughed and said that she was in the Blossoming Moon Trade Association. The commander couldn't believe it and said the association belonged to the First Star, so the First Star was also involved in the death of the commander's father, namely Zhang Riong. Seo Wunhui confirmed that this was how the commander's thirst for revenge was awakened in his heart. The commander still doubted this version, for his father's body had wounds inflicted by the Orthodox sect, but the people who had found his father's body belonged to the Blossoming Moon Trade Association. The commander had a look of disbelief on his face. Then Seo Wunhui gave us the sister's exact location, Jinhao County in Zhejiang Province. He advised to send people there who could be trusted. The commander again asked the young man who he was. Seo Wunhui realized that the agreement must have taken place, so asked if he could count on the commander's help in the future. The commander threatened that if it turned out that the guy had lied to him, he would be immediately beheaded. Sao Wunhui replied that he didn't need to lie because he had already swallowed the bloodworm. He hoped that the captain would be able to find his sister. The man promised that he would consider him his benefactor for life if his sister was found. Seo Unhui thanked the commander for the honor. After all, the commander was a fair and wise man. He handed the boy a plaque indicating his rank. He was given a medium rank. The captain explained that Seo Wunhui had blocked his attacks twice, which meant he was not a bad fighter. He also promised to support his legend about his grandfather. The captain realized it was a lie because he never told him his grandfather's name. Seo Yunhui admitted that he was lying. Even so, the captain trusted him. The young man took his short sword and left the cave with Sodom. She was glad that the battle had a successful outcome. The commander thought about how this strange guy had managed to keep his composure all this time. He seemed experienced despite his slowness. Perhaps someone or something was helping him. However, Seo Wunhui didn't have any negative emotions toward him, more like the opposite. At that time, Captain O ordered the next recruit to prepare for the test. He ordered those who had already completed the task to split up according to their rank. Jaebek was surprised that Seo Unhui had gotten the middle rank. Sudam and Seo. Unhui laughed joyfully at his naive expression. A squad of mid-rank recruits followed Captain O. Jaebek couldn't figure out what Seo Unhui was doing among them. Could it be that he was so honored by his affiliation with the blood cult? Jaebek promised to try his best to beat Seo Wunhui. The boy sighed sadly. Why was everyone around him trying to get in his way? He had only been in the Valley of Blood for a few days and already made enemies. Even Captain O was always looking over his shoulder. Apparently, Seo Unhui made the man very nervous. When the Blood Wolf squad leader confirmed Seo Unhui's origin, Captain O became very angry. Sodom reminded the guy of the episode with the tainted air, which made him uncomfortable again. The sword avatar asked what he was going to do next. First, he needed to find a way to restore his dantian. Seo Unhui had once heard of a healer who could cure any ailment, but everything had a price. There was no telling what he would ask for in return. The divine healer was to visit the Blood Valley in 10 days. However, there was nothing to pay Seo Wunhui with. Sudam said that the poor young man had nothing else but a short sword. Was he really going to give it away? The sword avatar came at the boy with his fists. Seo Wunhui defended himself as best he could against the small hands. Jaebek saw the guy fighting the air and wondered if he should follow him. Seo Unhui wanted to find a medicinal plant and pay him back. He knew what kind of plant the healer needed, and also knew where to find it. Sudam smiled, pleased at how clearly Seo Unhui had thought of everything. Given the circumstances, the young man hoped to succeed in the blood cult. Suddenly, the travelers saw dead bodies of people lying on their way. Captain O ordered everyone to stop. He cried out in horror, trying to understand what had happened here and who had done it. Suddenly, everyone saw a powerful, huge man standing in front of them dressed in a tiger skin. He was holding some guy by the neck. Seo Woon Hui heard the stranger say that these brats were no good. Captain O menacingly asked the man who he was. The man looked into the crowd and said that the new assholes had finally arrived. He walked up to Captain O and hit him with such force that the poor guy flew far away. When the captain got to his feet, he immediately ordered the recruits to retreat and drew his sword. A stranger's hand stopped him. Ordering him to stay out of his way, he easily tossed the captain aside. Seo Un Hui and the others were terrified. If this man could easily take out the captain, he could take out any commander. The boy had never encountered a warrior of such a high level in his previous life. Jia Baek somehow thought the captain was dead. The stranger clapped his hands, causing a gust of wind so loud that Seo Woon Hui could barely stand on his feet. The clap was so loud that everyone around him covered their ears. The man said frustratedly that perhaps these bastards were nothing if a simple clap had demoralized them. Sodom tried to bring Seo Un Hui to his senses in a panic. His eardrums seemed like they were going to burst. His ears were bleeding and he felt dizzy. Suddenly the boy felt a warmth in his chest. At this moment, the ringing in his ears stopped and his wounds recovered. Seo Un Hui heard shouting behind him and turned around. He saw that Song Woo-hyun was lying on the ground, and his brother rushed to the attack. He seemed to be the only one who could withstand the clap. The man laughed loudly and kicked Jia Baek, who was running toward him, in the head. Woo-hyun approached his knocked-out brother, trying to bring him to his senses. Sudam asked Seo Un Hui if he could move. The boy himself realized that it was not safe to stay here, but then a stranger in a tiger skin noticed him. The young man immediately rushed away, but was caught and kicked. He then lost consciousness. After a while, the cultists found Captain O lying on the ground and several injured recruits. He woke up and told how someone had knocked him out with a single blow. Captain O described his appearance, mentioning his uncombed hair and tiger skin as special features. Gu Sang-woon questioned him, clarifying that he had understood correctly that a certain person had mutilated and stolen the prisoners. Captain O confirmed it. From the description, the stranger looked like Elder Hei Achon. He was one of the 4 supreme elders of the blood cult who lived in the Six Blood Valley. His eccentricity was legendary. At this time, Seo Un Hui woke up in Hei Achon's dwelling and looked around without finding his short sword. Hei Achon laughed and showed him the short sword he was holding. The elder was surprised that Seo Woon Hui, with his broken dantian, could withstand such an attack, and even woke up first afterwards. He was clearly anticipating the fun. The 2 cultists set out to find the recruits in the elder's lair. Climbing up the cliff above Captain O took the blame for the cadets' kidnapping. Gu Sang-woon assured him that it would be difficult for any warrior to compete with the elder. The captain was concerned about the fate of the recruits. If something happened to them, it would be a huge loss to the blood cult. Mid-ranked fighters were not easy to find. Gu Sang-woon replied that he had no idea what might have happened to them. No one expected the elder to be interested in the children and come to the Valley of Blood. When they were about to reach Gu Sang-woon's abode, he warned Captain O to choose his words carefully when speaking to the Supreme Elder. He has a reputation for being the most unpredictable head of the cult. When they were at the entrance of the abode, Gu Sang-woon got down on one knee and swore an oath to the blood demon. Then he introduced himself, giving his name and rank. The commander ordered Captain O to do the same. There was no response. Captain O offered to enter the abode, but Gu Sang-woon stopped him, advising him to wait. Suddenly, from the depths of the abode, something flew straight towards the commander. He reacted in time to defend himself with his sword. The man noticed that it was only a seed from an apple. At that moment, an elder's voice came from the darkness and praised the commander for his dexterity. Gu Sang-woon replied that he didn't deserve such high praise because he was just an insect to a skilled craftsman like Elder. The elder asked the travelers if they had come here for the abducted children. The commander nodded, explaining that they intended to raise these children to be worthy warriors of the blood cult. The elder said he had no intention of harming them. These guys seemed pretty good and promising, so he was going to teach them a couple techniques while they were in his abode. Gu Sang-woon was astonished at this news because Elder Hei had never taken on any disciples. Something was not right here. However, the commander said he understood and congratulated the elder for accepting the students. But the elder explained that he had taken the children to brighten his loneliness. Gu Sang-woon immediately apologized for his ignorance. Captain O stared at the elder in confusion. Training under such a great master could change the fate of any new recruit. Seo Un Hui could not be allowed to be trained by him. The captain asked for permission to speak to the elder. He said that one of the cadets named Seo Un Hui had a damaged dantian. Gu Sangwoon looked at him without understanding why he was saying that. Captain O said that such a cadet was unworthy of being trained by an elder. At the same second, the captain was hit in the forehead by an apple thrown at him by the elder. The blow was so powerful that the man did not hold on and flew down the cliff with a scream. Elder. He asked rhetorically why the man spoke his opinion when no one asked him to. After all, he had chosen these cadets himself. Then he said that he had been in a bad mood since morning and ordered the uninvited guests to leave. Gu Sangwoon immediately turned around and headed towards Blood Valley. He was disappointed that they had lost the promising twins. He planned to send Seo Woon Hui as a spy to the Martial Arts Alliance. When the guests left, the elder said how noisy they were. Seo Woon Hui realized that the black and white demons were trained in battle techniques just by the elder. But he couldn't understand why he was among them now. Hei Achan said he was hungry and ordered Seo Woon Hui to get food in 4 hours. The guy thought he'd misheard. I wonder if he was hired to fetch food. Picking his teeth with his short sword, the elder warned the young man not to even think of running away. He would be caught and punished anyway. Seo Woon Hui thought about pretending to understand and trying to escape anyway. He said he didn't know any fighting techniques anyway, and without a weapon, he would have trouble getting food. The sword that Hei Achan was holding was the only memory of his mother. After listening to the speech, the elder swung his sword straight at the young man, hitting him in the forehead. Hei Achan noted the young man's cunning and said that he didn't need such a useless knife anyway. The boy thanked the elder. Sodom appeared and expressed her displeasure at Hei Achan's misuse of the short sword. In the meantime, the elder struck his fists at the unconscious twins, thus trying to bring them to their senses. CEO. Woon Hui thought they wouldn't last long. Hei Achan picked them up by the scruff of the neck and dragged them towards the exit. He turned around and said he wanted to eat some meat. In the same second, he disappeared along with the twins. Seo Woon Hui didn't realize what had happened right away. He stepped out of the cave into the light and only now realized that he was on top of a cliff. The boy was terrified. After all, it would take him at least 4 hours just to get downstairs. Seo Woon Hui lamented the impossible task. He risked incurring the elder's wrath. Sodom asked him to look at something off to the side. The young man saw Hei Achan jumping from rock to rock with the word monkey, holding the twins in his hand. It was pointless to run away, because it was impossible to hide from such a dexterous and strong master. After pulling himself together, the boy decided to climb down. He came to the cliff and hung on his hands and feet. Even though Seo Woon Hui was afraid of falling from a height, he decided to do his best. Suddenly, the ledge he was holding onto with his hand fell off, and the young man flew downward. Fortunately, he managed to grab onto a branch and was not badly hurt. Without Dantian, he had a hard time. The sword avatar wondered how he had managed to survive such a fall. Seo Woon Hui once again lamented his unlucky fate. Sodom laughed at the joke of his quick descent. The annoyed boy shouted at her, promising to beat the crap out of her. However, it was still a long way to the ground. He just hovered in the middle of the path. When the 4 hours were up, Hei Achan looked for Seo Woon Hui, hanging on a rock. He was so hungry and angry that he was ready to take the life of anyone who came under his hot hand. The boy couldn't think of anything better than to say that he missed the elder. Hei Achan had never heard such nonsense in his life. The task was failed and severe punishment followed. Seo Woon Hui desperately tried to descend the cliff in less than 4 hours, but was unsuccessful. Soon, he ventured on a desperate escape, but was caught and punished again. After 2 months, Seo Woon Hui became a strong and agile fighter. But the most important thing was that he finally learned how to hunt. Sodom has consistently supported him, giving him strength and inspiration. Today he proudly caught 2 rabbits. Suddenly there was a loud noise behind him, and Seo Woon Hui felt his heart beat frantically in his chest. Elder Hei's appearance was always exciting. His stomach rumbled with hunger, and he decided to find Seo Woon Hui without waiting for him to show up. The boy presented him with 2 rabbits. However, it was too little for 4 mouths. Hei said that 1 eater would have to be gotten rid of. Seo Woon Hui didn't have time to do anything before he was hit on the head with his fist. The poor man woke up in a painful suspended state on a cold rock. Today was clearly not his day. Seo Woon Hui had been living as a slave for 2 long months, worrying endlessly about what the cruel Elder Hei might do. Against all odds, risking everything, he tried to survive in these brutal conditions. But no matter what the result, he was invariably punched in the face. Seo Un-hui often lost consciousness from the beatings and came to his senses tied up and hanging on a branch like a limp doll. When the young man was first strung up, he was violently nauseous, but now his exhausted body had learned to bear this humiliating ordeal patiently. But suddenly a familiar voice called out to him, and he jumped in surprise. It was Jabaek, who looked like he'd been through hell himself. He and Wu Hyun were also beaten mercilessly. Jabaek came to get Seo Un-hui to tell him that the elder wished to see him. Sodom couldn't hide her surprise, as the young man usually hung on much longer. Seo Un-hui was terrified of what awaited him. In the abode, Elder Hae-sun suddenly ordered him to take off his clothes. Seo Un-hui couldn't believe his ears, so he asked again. Receiving an affirmative answer, he took off his shirt, exposing his muscular torso, which had undergone changes in the constant struggle for survival. The physical form of the fighter satisfied the elder, and he noted with satisfaction that the young man had benefited from the foraging for food, and now something more awaited him. Turning to Jabaek, the elder demanded that he now begin to get food for everyone. The twin tried to protest, but received a crushing kick to the face so that he flew out of the cloister. The man instructed Wu Hyun to prepare food while he was away. Elder Hae grabbed Seo Un-hui by his clothes, and without warning, he began to rapidly jump from one rock to another. The young man's heart was racing with fear. He asked if he could walk, but the man sharply cut him off and told him to shut up. The new recruit had to learn basic movement techniques through practice. With those words, the elder let him go, and Seo Un-hui fell into the icy river. Almost reaching the bottom, he desperately swung his arms to float to the surface, overcoming the icy cold chilling his entire body. When he saw the elder on the bank, he indignantly asked why he had thrown him into the river. Elder. He laughed and explained that he was taking the recruit to his mentor, so it was impossible to appear in front of him like this. Seo Un-hui couldn't believe what he was hearing. It sounded like mockery. That's when Sodom suddenly appeared, whispering that the elder didn't seem to realize that the dirtiest was himself. At this moment, Elder he ordered to finish bathing and get out of the water. Seo Un-hui smiled embarrassedly as he replied that he had not yet had time to wash himself properly, but the elder's orders were not to be discussed. When they reached the waterfall, they passed through its powerful streams and found themselves in a secret cave. It was clearly inhabited by someone who did not wish to be discovered. Sodom began to fantasize that some handsome martial artist might be lurking here. Seo Un-hui doubted that Elder Hai could have had an adequate friend. Most likely, there was an equally insane character living here. Finally, the man stopped and solemnly announced that they had arrived. In the depths of the cave, Seo Un-hui noticed a mysterious dark silhouette. The elder turned to the young man and ordered him to pay his respects to his mentor. The guy obeyed and knelt down on one knee and paid his respects to the blood demon with seriousness, giving his name and rank. Sodom embarrassedly explained that his mentor was unlikely to be able to answer him. The young man looked up. At this moment, Seo Un-hui gazed at the silhouette, and with a horrifying realization, he saw a skeleton clad in decaying clothes in the darkness. The new recruit asked the elder confusedly if this was all some kind of weird joke. Elder Hae laughed loudly and said that Seo Un-hui should have realized one important truth a long time ago. The man explained that when the young man climbed the rock, he became stronger. When he hunted, he became faster and tougher. As he endured the beatings, he became stronger in body and spirit. Even when he was hanging from a tree, his energy core was being trained. Elder. He said that all the time spent in the abode was meant to form a physical foundation for the sake of learning martial arts. Hearing this, Seo Un-hui lowered his head and bitterly said that he had lost his dantian as a child. However, it turned out that he was aware of his affliction and knew a way to control the internal energy without the energy core itself. Seo Un-hui froze as if struck by lightning, and his mind was seized by a storm of conflicting emotions of hope and surprise. Elder, he asked him what essence was. Of course he knew. It was something that every martial artist had to learn at the beginning of their martial arts training. It was also called the energy core. There were two techniques that could be used when learning martial arts: circulation technique or energy cultivation technique. But since Seo Un-hui's core energy was destroyed, he couldn't use his essence. In the end, two things remained: energy and the physical body. Elder Hai asked the young man about energy. Seo Un-hui felt uneasy at these words. He seemed to know what he was talking about. Hae told what few people knew. He pointed to the young man's heart. At the center of the recruit's chest was the innate core energy. It couldn't be accumulated and was something that Seo Un-hui had from birth. Its power was twice that accumulated through the energy core. Elder He said that the boy was lucky because the words inscribed in this cave taught him how to control his innate energy. Sodom was overjoyed. She thought that Seo Un-hui had hit the jackpot, and even without Dantian, he would be able to master the martial art. She asked him why he didn't rejoice with her. The boy sighed sadly and said that the innate core energy was equal to life itself. If he used it in battle, he wouldn't live long. Sodom looked at Seo Un-hui disappointedly. He was contemplating how to avoid it and asked the elder to teach him another way. The boy began to thank He for the honor and bowed. Then he asked him to explain something. He had once lost his energy core after experiencing an energy deviation due to his lack of martial abilities. Everyone around him told him he was talentless. Of course, that was a lie, and Sodom realized it. The elder pondered his words. He smiled and said that apparently the recruit knew something of martial arts since he came from a martial clan. The man realized it was a bluff. Seo Un-hui panicked and pretended not to understand what was being said. He grabbed him by the neck and lifted him into the air. It was obvious that he was furious. The elder explained that if the recruit didn't learn it, he would be useless to him. He gave Seo Un-hui a choice. Either he learns to use his innate core energy, or he gives up his life. The sword avatar excitedly shouted for the young man to agree to train in this, but that would mean that everything would go according to Elder He's plan. Seo Un-hui gasped and replied that he would rather end his life right now. Sudom was horrified by those words. The elder said that he should have done it because no one would notice the loss of one recruit, and also that Seo Un-hui simply had no other chance to become an excellent martial artist. However, the boy firmly insisted on his own way. He didn't want to be a puppet in the hands of the leaders of the blood cult. If he already had a parasite inside him, he'd want to end it drastically. Heye Achan laughed loudly and let go of Seo Un-hui. He collapsed to the ground with a thud. The elder told him that lying was pointless, and he had long known about the absence of the bloodworm in the young man's body. He had assessed the new recruit's body condition the first time they met, and that was why he took him with him. Seo Un-hui wondered why the elder hadn't given him away. The elder replied that there were more important things than some parasite. The boy wondered what this crazy man wanted from him. The elder decided to offer the new recruit a deal. He will continue to cover for him in front of the blood cult, but Seo Un-hui will have to follow his orders. When the cadet learns to use his energy core, he will fight the twins who will be trained by Hai Aksong himself. Seo Un-hui was stunned. Sodom exclaimed why the elder hadn't suggested it sooner. It would have been profitable to cooperate with him. However, Seo Un-hui still didn't understand some things, only Hai Aksong was tired of answering stupid questions. He told him to shut up and follow his instructions. Now, the young man needed to feel the inner energy of the core. When he completes this task, he will be able to return to Hai Achan's abode. With these words, the elder left the cave, advising him not to do anything stupid. Looking at the retreating man's back, Sudom assumed that he seemed to like Seo Un-hui, but he didn't want to have anything to do with that madman. He turned to the writing scrawled in front of the skeleton, but if it were that simple, no one would need a master to teach. Hyakon, silently and gracefully moving by leaps through the forest, very much hoped that he was not mistaken about this cadet. After reading the message, Seo Un-hui had an epiphany. It said that if one could learn the technique completely, one could stop the innate core from being consumed. Sodom was glad to hear it. Unfortunately, the last part of the message, which contained the most important information, was missing. Seo Un-hui was disappointed that this unfortunate skeleton had died before he could write the most important secret. Suddenly, the sword avatar turned her attention to the skeleton and thought about something. Surely this crazy elder knew the manuscript wasn't finished. But then, why did he leave it here? Sodom caught a flash of aggression when Seo Un-hui called the skeleton unhappy. The guy asked her to talk to the skeleton, but she called him an idiot and said she could only talk to his weapon. It was a simple iron sword. Seo Un-hui scrutinized the weighty sword with exquisite designs. Sudom explained that the young man himself had been able to communicate with him. He stared thoughtfully at his hand, where a mysterious power lurked. Sodom interrupted his musings, calling him to commune with the sword. The young man grasped the hilt of the sword. The iron sword avatar longed for human touch, for its owner had long since left this world. The boy pulled away upon hearing the voice of the sword, but soon touched it again. The avatar introduced itself as the Iron Sword of the Southern Sky, noting that its owner was the famous Ba Ho John Day, the same warrior who used him to turn the whole province of Yunnan upside down. Seo Woon Hui was amazed that such an outstanding master had found his resting place here. The young man asked if Hai Achan had caused the death of his owner, but the Iron Sword avatar said that he had never defeated him. Seo Woon Hui wondered who could have defeated such a talented master. The Sword of Southern Sky promised to tell him about it later. He had heard the conversation between Hai Achan and the new recruit, and therefore knew what to do. The Iron Sword avatar offered to train Seo Woon Hui in the new technique. Sodom was wary upon hearing his quick agreement, but it was a matter of honor. If Seo Woon Hui doesn't win the fight with Jia Bek and Wu Hyun, Ba Ho Jongdae's honor will be in jeopardy. The Southern Sky Sword also sought to pass on its secret knowledge to a new generation. An enthusiastic Seo Woon Hui expressed his gratitude for the honor. However, the avatar of the Iron Sword asked the young man to become his master. He felt lonely and longed to find a new owner. At that moment, the Sword of the Southern Sky was slapped by Sodom, and a scuffle ensued. Watching what was happening, Seo Woon Hui hesitated and wanted to give up everything, but he had no other choice. He agreed to become the master of the Southern Sky Sword on the condition that he didn't behave inappropriately. So a contract was made, and they began their training. The avatar explained that the essence known as core energy was located just below the stomach. The acquired core energy and the innate core energy were located in different areas. Seo Woon Hui concentrated trying to realize this. The energy core was divided into the lower central and higher ones. The upper one was above the middle of the forehead and corresponded to the area of awakening of consciousness. The young man needed to delve deeper into his sensations, and to make the process easier, the Sword of the Southern Sky advised him to visualize the energies. It was also necessary to use all 5 senses. In extraordinary situations, the energy could manifest itself. Seo Woon Hui had probably experienced this state before. The boy was revitalized when he remembered the blue fire. Suddenly, Seo Woon Hui realized that Hai Achan wasn't just putting him to the test. The elder sought to awaken his innate energy and wanted to do the exact same thing to the Song brothers. Sodom came to the conclusion that this old man had really gone mad. It was hard to disprove. The Southern Sky Sword suggested that the young man might have experienced this state before. He just needed to remember that situation and the emotions associated with it. Seo Woon Hui began to go through all the troubles that had happened to him. A blue flame lit up around Seo Woon Hui. It was a great sensation. It was the same feeling he had when he swallowed a bloodworm. The Southern Sky Sword was surprised that the young man was able to master this technique in just 4 hours because his master had spent months on it. But after all, the previous owner of the sword was a high-ranked martial artist. Seo Woon Hui couldn't believe what he had accomplished. Sodom suggested that his rebirth helped him, that he died and then came back to life. The Sword of the Southern Sky had never heard of such a phenomenon before. He advised the guy to focus on the innate core energy to feel it surge. Seo Woon Hui immersed himself in his sensations. If he mastered this technique, he could increase the size of the energy essence and thus make it stronger. The young man already felt that it was of sufficient size. With the acupuncture point on his forearm, he could conduct the main energy through his heart. The Southern Sky Sword advised him to test his strength by hitting a rock that was nearby. Seo Woon Hui felt uncertain. Sodom reassured him, saying that even if his arm was damaged, he could repair it with his innate energy. However, the Southern Sky Sword wasn't sure about that. Seo Woon Hui was amused by the ease with which the incorporeal beings reasoned about another's hand. Finally, the boy gathered his strength and prepared to strike. Concentrating all his energy into his fist, the stone shattered. The sword avatars cheered. With such abilities, Seo Woon Hui could learn all known battle techniques faster than a top-ranked master in 10 years. The boy realized that in his body lurked an incredible power with which he was capable of becoming a powerful warrior. After Seo Woon Hui mastered his innate inner energy, he hurried to Hai Achan's abode. The elder met him in a bad mood. Seo Woon Hui once again found himself being punished. He was knocked down because he was late. Hai Achan thought that the newcomer was trying to escape. Keeping his foot on Seo Woon Hui's head, the elder asked if he was able to feel his internal energy. The boy decided to hide the truth from the elder. Hei was disappointed, but tried to encourage him by saying that it couldn't be learned in one day. Sudam asked Seo Un-hui why he hid the truth. However, in this world, it was dangerous to reveal one's inner self. He realized that Hai Achan wouldn't be able to verify his sincerity. However, the elder was very wise. Seo Un-hui and Sodom looked at him in surprise. Hei realized that the recruit had avoided using innate energy to prolong his life. He decided to inform Seo Un-hui of the consequences of losing. In that case, he would have to obey Captain O. It turned out that the captain had come to the abode several times and asked for Seo Un-hui's return. The boy was surprised by Captain O's interest in his fate. Hei Achan warned what would happen if it became known that there was no parasite in Seo Un-hui's body. The young man will forever be a low-ranking fighter. It was against their deal. The elder reminded him that the new recruit had previously used tricks to avoid fighting at full strength. Seo Un-hui was stunned to hear this. He knew that if he lost, Hei might take his life, but he didn't know what would happen if he won. The elder laughed and promised to fulfill any request from Seo Un-hui. After that, he took out some books from his pocket and gave them to the boy. He picked up one of them. The cover said that it was a textbook on the art of light chakram. It was a kind of throwing weapon. He said that although the cadet couldn't learn the secret knowledge from the skeleton, he could easily learn the light chakram art. Sodom realized that Hai Achan wanted to prepare Seo Un-hui to fight on par with the twins, who had also trained and become skilled fighters during this time. Seo Un-hui picked up another book with some trepidation. This book taught the technique of the Shining Star Sword. Its creator was the same skeleton he learned from. Sodom really wondered how Hai had gotten these records. Did he dare to search the body? The elder, sensing the young man's uneasiness, took his head and asked him with undisguised irritation why he had such a sour face. Seo Un-hui asked how Hei had gotten these books. The teacher hesitated for a moment, but then said firmly that he had gotten them from someone. At this moment, the room was filled with the presence of the Southern Heaven Sword avatar, and his voice was filled with an accusing severity. He stated that his words were a lie. The elder had actually stolen the books to learn techniques and defeat the former master in a duel. Seo Un-hui was deeply shocked to learn what Hai Achan had gotten himself into. However, the elder promised to personally teach the cadet how to use the technique. The Southern Sky Sword assumed that he had mastered some moves and combined them with his own skill. Therefore, the twins Woohyun and Jabek will be using an already improved technique. This made Sodom bitter and resentful, and she did not hesitate to express her displeasure. It appeared that Hai Achan didn't want Seo Un-hui to win at all, despite all his words of encouragement. This revelation caused Sodom to burst out in anger. She angrily called him a crazy bastard. It seemed that he just seemed to be enjoying what was happening, like a madman looking for entertainment. The Shining Star Sword revealed to them the truth that he and its previous wielder had invariably dueled, but neither had been able to defeat the other. Unfortunately, the swordsmen of the Southern Sky passed away due to natural causes and remained undefeated. Now, if their disciples were to clash, Hai Achan would clearly prefer that Seo Un-hui be defeated. Seo Un-hui was in a state of confusion and had to think deeply about how to handle this difficult situation while maintaining his dignity. Sudam suggested that Seo Un-hui use her short sword. She didn't want the Sword of the Southern Sky to be involved in the fight. At the same time, she was worried that Hai Achan might oppose it. The Southern Sky Sword assured him that even by stealing the records, the elder couldn't comprehend Shining Star's skill. At that time, the technique was imperfect. He of course improved it as much as he could, but the Southern Sky Swordsman continued to work on the technique after losing the records, and it was his version that was the most perfect. Seo Un-hui excitedly began practicing with the Sword of Southern Sky, making sure to practice the differences between the two versions. He realized that if Hai Achan hadn't stolen the records, the technique would still be unfinished. Sodom worriedly asked what would happen if the elder saw Seo Un-hui using the advanced technique. He would surely realize that the recruit had deceived him. Regardless of the outcome of the fight, Seo Un-hui was still in trouble. The avatars anxiously asked what he intended to do about the situation, but it looked like Seo Un-hui already had a plan in place. He told the avatars only that no one ever fell into the same trap twice. Such a vague answer intrigued them. Meanwhile, Captain O was standing at the entrance to Hai Achan's abode, but he was not alone. He brought a young man with him. The captain was anticipating how Seo Eun-hui would finally fall into his hands and how he would deal with this unworthy upstart. For that, he brought a top-ranked fighter to trade him for Seo Eun-hui, a guy named Do-hyun. This was a truly outstanding young fighter whose successes had impressed Captain Oh himself. The travelers met Seo Eun-hui, who was returning from a training session. Captain Oh noticed him and said they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The boy tensed. This meeting did not bode well. Besides, the cultist had brought an unknown young man with him for some reason. Captain Oh grinned at the fact that Seo Eun-hui was successfully acting as Hai Akjong's slave. Without paying attention to it, the new recruit humbly greeted them. They probably came to deliver some supplies. The young man said that the elder was not at home at the moment, so he could not receive them. Suddenly, Captain O put his hand on Seo Eun-hui's shoulder. The guy guessed that he was testing him using internal chi energy. He seemed to be satisfied with the result of the test. He sensed the destroyed Dantian and felt nothing else. Seo Eun-hui sighed in relief. Captain O introduced his companion and said that Do-hyun would now serve Hai Ashon in his place, without forgetting to jab Seo Eun-hui by calling him scum. The captain also said that Seo Eun-hui's legend about his grandfather had not been confirmed and that he should follow him to the Valley of Blood for clarification. The young man panicked. His grandfather had never told anyone that he was a member of the Blood Wolves. He also doubted that Hai Achan would accept Do-hyun as a disciple. Captain O was furious at such an insolent statement. He had ordered Do-hyun to teach the upstart a lesson and decided to take full responsibility for the consequences. He stepped aside in anticipation of the spectacle. Do-hyun looked down at Seo Eun-hui and warned him that he had nothing against him, so he asked him not to be offended even if it hurt a lot. Without another word, Do-hyun swung his fist straight at Seo Eun-hui's head, but he deftly dodged the blow. Captain O clearly didn't expect such a leap of faith from a mid-ranked fighter. Do-hyun was also surprised to say the least. It was because he was trained in the Blood Cult's basic fighting technique, while Seo Eun-hui possessed the Shining Star technique, which was considered more advanced. At that moment, a furious Hai Akshon appeared out of nowhere, displeased that someone had attacked his student. Do-hyun smelled something wrong. The last thing the poor man saw in his life was the elder's angry face. He broke the poor man's neck with a slight movement of his hand. Even Seo Eun-hui didn't expect this. The beatings he had endured for months were nothing compared to this. Hai Akon then took on Captain O. The elder took him by the head and questioned who he was, although it wasn't the first time he had seen him. The frightened captain gave his name and reported that he was serving under Commander Gu Sang-woon. But Hai was not satisfied with this answer. He wanted to understand how this worthless cultist dared to rampage through his territory. The captain tried to justify himself, but in his position, it was difficult. Sodom and Seo Eun-hui were surprised at how strong Hai Achan was at holding the highly ranked martial artist with one hand. The boy realized that he would never become as strong and powerful even after years of training. Suddenly, someone called out to him, calling him a lowlife from Luoyang. It was the twins. Both were in good physical shape, only Wu Hyun had lost his hair. They noticed that Seo Eun-hui had been practicing hard all this time too. Then the brothers saw Captain O and Hai Achan. As they watched, Seo Eun-hui wondered how harsh their training was. They seemed to be getting stronger every day. Looking at the body of the stranger lying nearby, the twins were horrified. He had been deprived of his life in a rather brutal way. Meanwhile, Hai Achan continued to beat up Captain O, who was begging him to listen. For some reason, he was very concerned about Seo Eun-hui's past. The elder told him to shut up and said that he wasn't interested in the cultist's tales. Then he knocked the captain out and turned to his apprentice. Howie said that Seo Eun-hui must have gotten on the captain's nerves if he wouldn't leave him alone. Then the young man confessed to taking the lives of two of his subordinates during his kidnapping. Jae Baek and Woo Hyun were stunned by the news. The elder replied that his subordinates were idiots like himself and therefore deserved their fate. It was the law of nature. Hae ordered the brothers to lower Captain O down the cliff and throw him nearby. The brothers obediently obeyed and hoisted the breathless body on their shoulders. When he was alone with Seo Eun-hui, the elder said that he was in a bad situation. Captain O was like a stray dog. Once they got their fangs into their prey, they'd never let go. There was little chance the captain would forget about him. Seo Eun-hui couldn't find anything to say to that and decided to help Jae Baek. Only Jae Baek didn't need any help. He lifted Captain O's body with ease and carried it without feeling any heaviness. The boy watched silently as Jabek jumped off the cliff. One of the brothers moved exactly like Hai Achan. Seo Wunhui was not able to do that, and he was disappointed that the elder hadn't taught him the technique. Sodom recommended that he find something similar in the records Hai had given him. Among them was a body-easing technique that could help with this. Sword of the Southern Sky said that he couldn't teach Seo Wunhui how to move on the rocks as well as the elder because it was Hai Achan's personal development. After hearing this, the furious Sodom attacked the Southern Sky sword with her fists. She was furious at its uselessness. Seo Wunhui began his descent down the cliff, far inferior to Jabek's skill and keeping slightly behind. Down one of the brothers threw Captain O's body to the ground and contemplated the fact that it might be worth finishing him off. He's been visiting too often. Seo Wunhui finally came down and found Jabek doing something strange. He asked him to help him immobilize Captain O because that was what Hai Achan meant. Jabek needed to vent his anger somewhere. Seo Wunhui realized that Jabek was going to break the captain's legs. However, they couldn't let that happen because they didn't want any trouble. Especially since even so, Captain O wouldn't get behind Seo Wunhui and would get even angrier at him. At that moment, the cultist opened his eyes, and realizing that the guys were deciding his fate without saying a word, he kicked Jabek in the face, calling the young man a fucking bastard. Captain O rose from the ground and came to his senses fully. Jabek paid the price for not using acupuncture points to disarm the man. The captain's eyes were bloodshot, and he said that now they would both regret not finishing him off when he passed out. Captain O attacked Seo Wunhui with fury. The young man, who was prepared and collected, met him with determination and prepared to repel the onslaught. Captain O was confident in his victory. He knew that Seo Wunhui didn't have Dantian, and that gave him a significant advantage. However, Seo Wunhui suddenly blocked his powerful hand punch, and Captain O's confidence shook with surprise. At this critical moment, Seo Wunhui pulled out the Southern Sky sword. His eyes lit up with determination, and with incredible strength, he wounded Captain O. This strike was the culmination of all his inner energy put into every drop of effort and passion for martial arts. The Avatar watching the fight was impressed, but told him not to let his guard down, reminding him that Captain O was a first-class fighter. Captain O, dumbfounded by Seo Wunhui's power, suddenly realized that his initial assumptions were wrong. He sensed no inner energy in his opponent, and this discovery shook him to the core. Gathering his strength, he rose to his feet, ready to continue this intense battle full of surprises. Seo Wunhui jumped above the ground as he prepared to deliver another devastating blow, his body floating in the air. Captain O instantly reacted by deftly dodging with a donkey somersault, and his insecurity only increased. He couldn't understand where Seo Wunhui had gotten this power from, and in his heart, he realized that this young man needed to be dealt with right now. After all, he could be a real threat in the future. Captain O, feeling a surge of rage, said that the recruit was finished, and his eyes lit up with fire. At that moment, the knocked-out Jabek seemed to wake up. He struggled to get up and saw Seo Wunhui and Captain O fighting, and was very surprised. They fought as equals like two lions, and there was not a single hint of weakness in this fight. The Sword of the Southern Sky, filled with energy, was supporting and encouraging Seo Wunhui in battle, as if he was a living inspiration to its wielder. Captain O realized that Seo Wunhui's battle skill level was far above the average rank, and it made him wary. The sword avatars advised Seo Wunhui to try a protracted fight to exhaust his opponent, and he took that advice to heart. At this time, Jabek didn't wait for the moment to attack Captain O and shouted for Seo Wunhui to get out of the way. Captain O slapped Jabek across the face with all his might, ordering him to stick in line behind Seo Wunhui. He was determined to deal with him. However, Jabek was also a good fighter and fought just as well. Seo Wunhui and the Sword of the Southern Sky watched the fierce fight with interest. Jabek, who was used to being beaten by Hai Achan, warned Captain O to get ready to receive another round of kicks. After receiving a powerful blow to the face and losing some of his teeth, Captain O didn't give up and spat blood in Jabek's face, and it fueled his anger. Captain O called Jabek a stubborn bastard and gathered all his internal energy in his left hand and punched him with force. This diverted his attention, and Seo Wunhui realized that this was the perfect moment to attack. Grabbing the iron sword, he quickly bypassed Jabek and used all his agility to nail Captain O to a tree. However, this was not Captain O's last blow. He clutched Seo Wunhui's hand and threateningly said that he was going to break it. But Seo Wunhui didn't hesitate to use his free hand to pull out the short sword. He activated the 8 lightning strike technique, preparing to take the life of Captain O. At this moment, the tension reached its peak. However, Captain O was able to repel the blow. It was as if he was laughing at Seo Wunhui. Even with his arm pierced by the short sword, the cultist had not lost his strength. Seo Wunhui realized that his level was not enough to defeat Captain O, and this feeling of hopelessness was weighing on him. Captain O smirked at the guy, saying he didn't expect his techniques to be over so quickly. At that moment, Ja Baek, and unwilling to give up, shouted to Seo Wunhui to try and pierce Captain O's head with the short sword. But Captain O, who had that sword sticking out of his hand, resisted it as best he could and begged for mercy. Ja Baek sprinted and kicked the hilt of his sword and drove it into the cultist's head. Captain O's eyes closed forever and his body collapsed, devoid of life. At this moment, the Southern Sky sword reminded Seo Wunhui that without Ja Baek's help, it was unlikely that he would be able to deal with Captain O. Ja Baek angrily called Captain O a goddamn bastard for his insolence. Spitting in the man's face was too much for him. It was the first life he took, but he didn't even realize the gravity of it. Ja Baek told Seo Wunhui that he owed him his life. Seo Wunhui looked at Ja Baek in disbelief. Ja Baek knew about the upcoming fight between them, and his confidence in victory was evident. He intended to become Hai Achan's official disciple, and the elder had already promised him that. Everyone realized that the outcome of the fight would affect their lives. Ja Baek gave Seo Wunhui a friendly hug and said that as far as he knew, Seo Wunhui would also get something as a reward for winning the fight. Seo Wunhui advised him not to talk as if Ja Baek had already won, but one of the twins was too confident. Then Seo Wunhui proposed a bet. The loser would have to become the winner's servant. However, Ja Baek did not agree and hurried back to the elder's abode. Seo Wunhui was left alone with Captain O's body, not knowing what to do with it. A young man summoned the avatar of the Southern Sky Sword. He decided to find out if Hai Achan's body-easing technique was more advanced than the Shining Star technique. Perhaps Seo Wunhui should have tried to learn from Hai Achan, who was unrivaled in the art of movement. Ja Baek reported to the elder that he had fulfilled his assignment. Hai Achan praised him and asked why the recruit had come alone. The twin answered him that Seo Wunhui was too slow and would arrive here in about 40 minutes. He was so worthless that he couldn't learn the speed technique. The elder, in his usual manner, took Ja Baek's hand behind his head and asked why his breathing was labored. The old man stared intently into his disciple's eyes and decided to find out who had taken Captain O's life. Ja Baek replied that he was the one who landed the decisive blow. Hei laughed and said that the guy fought like a lion, but he couldn't have defeated such a master alone. At that moment, Seo Wunhui appeared in the abode. He looked shabby. The elder looked at him angrily, waiting to see what he was going to say. When Seo Wunhui came closer, he reported that he had taken care of Captain O as instructed. This made Hai Achan incredibly angry. He squeezed Ja Baek's skull with force, muttering that his training time would be increased from now on. The poor man was shocked and tried to justify himself by saying that he fought the captain alone all the time. But the elder didn't believe him and threw him into the wall across the hall. Here, Seo Wunhui felt sorry for his misguided comrade. The elder asked him what he was staring at and told him to leave if he had nothing more to say. The boy wanted to clarify the details of their pact. After all, Hei had promised him to fulfill any request if he defeated Ja Baek. The elder was willing to listen to his wish. The young man was truly amazed at Hai Achan's incredible ability to swiftly cover long distances. Therefore, Seo Wunhui asked to be trained in movement techniques. The elder laughed and promised to teach him Qinggong. Sodom found it strange how easily he agreed, but it was to be expected because he was sure that Ja Baek would win. The fight was going to take place in exactly 3 months. Even though Captain O was not alive, if he lost, Seo Wunhui would still be punished. Hai Achan gave him the advice to train at full strength. After going down to the river, Seo Wunhui washed his face with the cool water. The Southern Sky Sword asked the guy about how he felt while using the Shining Star technique in real combat. The young man shared that he was helped by pure luck and the fact that Captain O's first move was one of the simplest, especially since Captain O had already been injured by Hai Achan before the fight. Southern Sky agreed. not forgetting to mention that his former master would have dealt with the captain with a single blow. Seo Woon-hui was amazed at the strength and power of this legendary master. Sodom excitedly said that now that the problem in the form of Captain O was solved, the young man would be able to focus on training. Jae Baek was Seo Woon-hui's strong opponent, so he needed to prepare well. The Sword of the Southern Sky advised him to practice basic sword movements. After all, it was impossible to learn advanced techniques without it. They had to become like a part of his body. Sodom asked Southern Sky if he was offended that Seo Woon-hui wanted to learn from Haya-chan. After all, he was considered a disciple of the Southern Swordsman. However, he replied that he wasn't upset by this fact at all. Southern Sky realized that Seo Woon-hui couldn't replace his master anyway. Therefore, it was logical that he tried to learn a little bit of everything. Meanwhile, Hye-akchon used harsh methods to train Jae-baek. He also showed him the Shining Star Sword technique, but the new recruit was unable to put it into practice. Jae-baek said that he was already much stronger than Seo Woon-hui, for which he got a stick in the face from the elder. Calling him an idiot, Hye-akchon explained that even though Seo Woon-hui had been trained without a teacher, the duel with Captain O had not left a single injury on him. Jae-baek exclaimed in amazement that it couldn't be, because he had seen Captain O beating him. Hye-akchon swung his stick again and said that if Seo Woon-hui had any injuries, he would have noticed it. The elder rebuked Jae-baek for not even bothering to watch Seo Woon-hui in battle because of his pride. He realized how stupid he had been all this time. He didn't like how his teacher kept comparing him to Seo Woon-hui. He had to beat that upstart no matter what it took. Jae-baek asked Hye-akchon to show him the Shining Star technique again. The elder laughed and asked if after hours of beating, the poor man still had strength. But Jae-baek was determined until Hye-akchon took his hand on his head and thus interrupted his fiery speech. Hye-akchon said that if the guy was willing to put his best foot forward, then let him prove it with actions. The elder intended to teach him a secret knowledge that few others had access to. The joyful Jae-baek thought he was already being taken as a disciple and listened carefully to Hye-akchon. Woo-hyun was at this time learning to keep his balance nearby and therefore could hear and see what was going on. But the elder had no intention of taking Jae-baek on as an apprentice. Not now, anyway. Instead, he slammed the poor man back into the rock. At this moment, their training was interrupted. Gu Sang-woon came to the abode and brought supplies. He paid his respects by bowing to the elder. Haye ordered him to leave the food and get out. However, the commander was interested in the fate of Captain O and Do-yun, who were due to arrive at the abode today. The elder replied that he didn't know any of them, and told Gu Sang-woon to leave. But he still tried to find out about the missing cultists. This made the elder very angry. Hye-akchon came close to the commander, clearly demonstrating their different weight classes and levels of fighting prowess. The elder sent him away and forbade him to be distracted from important matters. Meanwhile, Seo Woon-hui was learning the art of meditation in the harsh weather. His body and spirit were in balance for the first time in a long time. His speed and agility had improved dramatically through hard daily training. However, Sodom and Southern Sky were not satisfied with everything. They corrected Seo Woon-hui's every move, trying to perfect his technique. Finally, the moment of battle arrived, and the young man advanced towards his destiny with the hope of a successful outcome. Seo Woon-hui excitedly asked Southern Sky about his level of sword skills. He replied with a slight bitterness in his heart that his skills left a lot to be desired. He recalled his previous master who was twice as strong as Seo Woon-hui. However, despite this, Southern Sky couldn't resist praising him. In just 3 months of training, the boy had achieved impressive results. Seo Woon-hui glowed with pride as he thanked his mentor, noting that this was possible thanks to the Southern Sky. The words touched the heart of Sodom, who had also invested a lot of effort in the young man's education. She felt a slight resentment because her efforts had been overshadowed. Seo Woon-hui couldn't resist thanking her too, but it only made her feel more resentful. Sodom took offense at his disdain and called him stupid. The guy, stunned by her sharp insult, froze in place, not expecting such a turn of events. His face reddened with embarrassment. He hadn't meant to offend anyone, but now he felt awkward and confused. Sodom shrieked that even if Seo Woon-hui had learned the Shining Star Sword technique all his previous battles, he had won because of it. Her voice sounded resentful, as if she was trying to prove her worth. Southern Sky stood up for him, saying that the upcoming fight was just a sparring match. But Sodom didn't stop, her eyes burning with anger. At one point, Seo Woon-hui sensing the tension, decisively raised his hand and silenced her. There was uncertainty in his voice when he asked Southern Sky if he could win a duel, knowing only 3 techniques. Southern Sky, with the wisdom of a mentor, reassured him, saying that it was better to perfectly refine 3 techniques than to superficially know all of them. His words brought comfort to Seo Eunhui's heart. He realized that his efforts were not in vain, and his journey was just beginning. Seo Eunhui was definitely strong, and he could have no doubts about his strength. In this confidence, he felt supported by both Southern Sky and Sodom, though she was unwilling to admit it. These words encouraged Seo Eunhui, and he promised to make every effort with determination. Filled with excitement, he arrived at the battle site. Hai Akon met him there, and smilingly remarked that Seo Eunhui had come early. The elder praised him for not running away and coming to meet his destiny. Hai Achan asked Seo Eunhui with interest if he was ready for the fight. With a confident smile, Seo Eunhui replied that they would only find out after the fight. At that moment, Jabek and Wu Hyun appeared at the appointed place. Seo Eunhui, Sodam, and Southern Sky stared at them in surprise. Jabek looked much more powerful than the last time they'd met. His confidence and strength were evident at first glance. Wu Hyun had lost the rest of his hair, which made him look comical. The situation was heating up, and the anticipation of the fight was getting more and more tense. Sodom and Southern Sky were concerned about the superior physical fitness of Seo Eunhui's opponents. It was as if he had read their minds. He asked the young man if he thought the twins had changed over the past 3 months. Without waiting for an answer, he announced the rules. There was no surrender in this fight. It was considered over only if one of the parties could fight no more. Seo Eunhui asked the elder who he was going to fight. Jabek stepped in front of him. Fortunately, it wasn't a 2-against-1 fight. Jabek's hands were wearing special metal gloves like boxing gloves. Seo Eunhui had a sword after all. Jabek must have a weapon too. These gloves were once used by Hai Achan himself. When Seo Eunhui saw them, he joked that they were worthy of his rusty sword. He knew that one of the elder's favorite martial arts was the black steel technique that doubled a fighter's physical abilities. With a smirk, Seo Eunhui noted that even knowing this technique wouldn't make Jabek an equal opponent. Sodom and Southern Sky appreciated the joke, but these words made Jabek very angry. He attacked furiously without seeing anything around him. Seo Eunhui was already calculating the strategy in his head. If Jabek attacked first, the young man would have a distance advantage because of his sword. There was a split second before Jabek would be within Seo Eunhui's radius. That moment has finally come. The guy used the shining star technique, but his opponent was also using the iron gauntlets. Hei Action watched with interest. He was going over the maneuvers of each of them. At some point, the elder realized that Seo Eunhui had also been training hard all this time. Suddenly, Seo Eunhui's fighting technique was blocked. Jabek grabbed his arm and called him a lowlife from Luoyang. With his free hand, he began to deliver devastating blows, but his opponent deftly dodged them. At one point, Seo Eunhui managed to break free. Rising up on his hands, he charged at Jabek's face with his foot. This maneuver allowed him to increase the distance between them. He was dumbfounded by the move. Seo Eunhui said that Jabek's internal energy couldn't have increased so quickly. He probably drank some kind of magic elixir. Jabek replied that he was just practicing hard. Only that was a lie, and Seo Eunhui knew it. No doubt Hai Action was helping him. Looking at Jabek now, Seo Eunhui already knew that in 10 years, he and his brother would be among the strongest warriors of the blood cult. Cultists had a lot to contribute to their formation. Now Seo Eunhui simply had to win this fight. In one lightning swift sword motion, the young man wounded his twin brother deeply. Jabek cried out in pain. Not a single muscle on Hai Achan's face did not flinch, but a fire was burning inside him. He didn't expect the situation to turn out this way. As Jabek lay on the ground and regained consciousness, he remembered Hai Achan's lessons. He was beating him with a stick with a stern face, implying that in a battle with a swordsman, you have to keep shortening the distance to keep him from reaching. Jabek tried to keep this rule in mind, but he couldn't keep up with the elder's quick movements, which seemed elusive to him. Each blow was like lightning, and he didn't have time to react. Hei Achan got angry and hit him with the stick again and asked if Jabek could see better. But Seo Eunhui's shining star technique was as good as the elder's. How could he reach such heights by practicing on his own? At that moment, Seo Eunhui called out to his opponent, urging him to get up. His voice sounded determined, which only increased the pressure on Jae-baek. He smirked and added that he wouldn't let some upstart from Luoyang make a fool of himself since he was trained by Hye-chan himself. The name sounded like a powerful spell of confidence in his mouth. Jae-baek prepared to fend off the attack. He stood ready for action, every muscle tense in anticipation of the fight. Hye-chan watched the further course of events with excitement, his eyes burning with excitement. Sodom and Southern Sky were worried about the outcome of the battle. Seo Woon-hui attacked Jae-baek with determination, but his sword was repulsed, and the young man flew off into the trees. The blow was strong, but he wasn't going to give up. Seo Woon-hui gathered his inner energy in his fist and took the sword in his left hand to strike again. At this moment, Jae-baek was carefully watching his movements and understood what kind of technique Seo Woon-hui was going to use. Thanks to this, he successfully blocked the attacks, despite the wounds that were affecting his condition. The fighters were not going to give in to each other. Seo Woon-hui realized that Jae-baek was anticipating his intentions, and it seriously complicated the situation. His attacks based on the Shining Star technique required precision and speed. Jae-baek, trained in Hye-chan's Qigong, successfully blocked every attempt. Given his injuries, Seo Woon-hui realized that he needed to be careful and think carefully about his actions. However, he also knew that using it would open up gaps in the defense. It was risky, but he had no other choice. He tried to increase the distance to get time to recover and analyze the situation, but Jae-baek seemed to anticipate his every move. Jae-baek used his speed and intuition to dodge Seo Woon-hui's attacks while looking for weaknesses in his defense. At this moment, he decided that there was no point in being distracted by Seo Woon-hui's sword. Instead, he focused on striking at Seo Woon-hui himself. Every moment could be decisive, and the tension between the fighters was growing. Both rivals realized that the outcome of the battle depended not only on strength, but also on intelligence. Seo Woon-hui was tired and breathed heavily. His body felt the effects of the intense struggle. At this moment, Jae-baek, seeing his opponent's vulnerability, decided to attack. He punched Seo Woon-hui in the stomach, and he flew away a few meters away in great pain. Jae-baek cheered as he felt that he was close to victory. Despite Sodom and Southern Sky, watching the scene cheered him up, shouting words of encouragement and reminding him of the importance of their original plan. Even though the fight was a real test for him, Seo Woon-hui realized that he still had a chance. He could stick to his plan. His wounds were not serious, and he knew that he could heal them with the cultivation of innate core energy. It gave him the strength to continue fighting. Hye-chan watched the fight with curiosity. His eyes were burning with interest. He was clearly pleased with the way Jae-baek was handling all the challenges with confidence. It would be reckless of Seo Woon-hui to rely on old techniques that had been easily mirrored by his opponent many times before. It was time to use the Shining Star technique that had been pumped up. This was to confuse Jae-baek and put the initiative back in his hands. Jae-baek felt confident in his strength and waited for Seo Woon-hui to attack. With a chuckle, he called him a dumb ass, hoping to annoy him and knock him off balance. But when he saw his opponent's first movements, doubt crept into his heart. He recognized the reflective clam move, but he soon realized that it was a more advanced level. Jae-baek was surprised when he realized how powerful Seo Woon-hui's attack was. A flurry of blows rained down on him, leaving him only the opportunity to defend himself, and at that moment, he realized that the fight had taken a whole new turn. Hye-chan jumped up in surprise, his heart pounding in his chest. Jae-baek fiercely defended himself, realizing that the attack formation had changed. Seo Woon-hui was jubilant that his plan had worked, and he proudly announced that he had decided to come up with something new after seeing how easily Jae-baek deflected his punches. But Jae-baek wasn't stupid enough to believe that Seo Woon-hui was making up maneuvers on the fly, even though he saw his opponent's eyes burning during the fight. The sliding creeper's attack became more rapid and Jae-baek could barely block it. He waited for the gaps in Seo Woon-hui's defense to appear again. Soon, such an opportunity presented itself, and he resolutely tried to attack at Seo Woon-hui's weak spot. But this time, Seo Woon-hui grabbed his arm without letting him carry out his plan. Jae-baek stared at him in surprise, unable to believe his eyes. Seo Woon-hui was able to absorb Jae-baek's attack and deflect his own blow. A sense of triumph flared within him, and he rejoiced in his successful attack, though he noticed the skin on his sword-holding hand cracking from the strain. Suddenly, he saw Jae-baek change. He was burning like an erupting volcano, his eyes glowing with fury, ready for another fight. Seo Southern Sky whispered to him that this was the full metal transformation technique that Jae-baek had learned from the Elder. The conditions of the fight have changed. Seo Woon-hui's old plan crumbled like a house of cards. The young man realized that he had to keep his distance, or he wouldn't be able to escape. Suddenly, Seo Woon-hui miraculously dodged the blow. His heart was pounding in his chest from the adrenaline. Jae-baek became even more elusive, like a shadow. But it was just a warning lunge, and Seo Woon-hui realized that if Jae-baek hit with full force, the consequences would be disastrous. Gathering all his determination, Seo Woon-hui prepared his sword, his hands trembling with tension, and he looked for a moment to turn the tide of the battle. But Jae-baek seemed to have become invulnerable. His confidence and strength radiated an aura of invincibility. Seo Woon-hui felt anxiety coming over him. In the middle of the fight, when his strength was exhausted, he noticed that Jae-baek was not only attacking, but also playing with him. With each new movement, Jae-baek became more and more confident. His aura dominated the battlefield and filled the entire space. Seo Woon-hui was on the verge of despair when Jae-baek grouped up and threw himself at him like a stone. At the last moment, he mustered all his strength to repel the blow. His reflective clam technique worked, but he could feel Jae-baek recovering like a predator, ready for the final throw. Gathering his wits, Jae-baek used the illusion of an explosion, and it was so unexpected that Seo Woon-hui almost lost his concentration. He tried to block the attack, but the world around him turned into chaos. Distinctly feeling his heart pounding in unison with the frantic rhythm of the battle, he noticed that Jae-baek was looking for his weaknesses. When Jae-baek tried to strike Seo Woon-hui, he felt his opponent's sword meet his strength. And at that moment, when all seemed hopeless, he noticed something unusual in Jae-baek's appearance. His heart clenched with worry. He asked if Jae-baek was all right, but he said angrily that it was none of his business and attacked again. Southern Sky warned Seo Woon-hui that things were getting dangerous, and he felt the tension rising. He knew he wouldn't be able to hold on much longer, but it wasn't about him now. It was about Jae-baek. Southern Sky remembered how Hai Achan had used the metal transformation technique. Seo Woon-hui realized that in this situation, his own survival depended on the decision. He had to stall for time to exhaust Jae-baek. But in a battle, Jae-baek, ignoring the pain, grabbed the blade of his weapon with his bare hands. Seo Woon-hui frantically thought of what to do. His opponent swung his other hand, and Seo Woon-hui clenched his teeth and suddenly put his hand out to meet it. This maneuver took Jae-baek by surprise, and his eyes widened in bewilderment. Even Hai Achan watched tensely and froze in anticipation. Southern Sky, realizing Seo Woon-hui's intent, said that he was trying to bring Jae-baek into the spirit duel by mixing his aura with his own innate energy. Sodom was surprised at his recklessness, but Southern Sky explained that Seo Woon-hui knew how to cultivate Shining Star energy. Otherwise, his maneuver would have turned into a disaster. Fiery streams of energy surrounded the opponents, but neither of them let go of the other's hand. Jae-baek's face was contorted with tension, while Seo Woon-hui remained calm despite the danger of the situation. Southern Sky noticed that Jae-baek, absorbed in the moment, seemed to have forgotten about all his techniques and was frozen motionless, unable to move. At this time, Jae-baek's mind was rushing through a whirlwind as he realized that his opponent had initiated a spirit duel, but he didn't think much of it at first. Soon, he became truly anxious. His strength was leaving his body, and the metal transformation technique, which had seemed invincible, began to break down. The Elder was filled with anger when he realized that the situation was not in his favor. Unable to watch calmly any longer, the Elder intervened and separated the fighters. Seo Woon-hui and Jae-baek flew apart, leaving behind clouds of dust. Once on the ground, Seo Woon-hui asked the Elder why he had interfered. Hye-chan replied with a smirk, stopping them before they had completely used up their innate energy. Folding his arms across his chest, he said with slight disdain that they could not defeat each other, and therefore the duel was cancelled. Then Seo Woon-hui asked in confusion and bewilderment what the outcome of the fight was. Was it really a draw? His voice shook with frustration and anger. However, the Elder, instead of answering, asked why the guy didn't use the secret recording technique he had given him. Seo Woon-hui replied with pride and determination that he was not so reckless as to resort to such techniques. His emotions were raging inside him. The guy irritably stated that Hayak-chan was a man with enough experience to use those records. He was sure that the elder knew all the nuances and weaknesses of the shining star technique perfectly. But when he heard Hia-chan's laughter, his confidence was shaken. The elder said with disdain on his face that he understood why Seo Wun-hui had changed the technique, but he didn't believe that the young man could think of such a thing on his own. Hayak-jong's question about who told him this caused Seo Wun-hui to burst into indignation. He replied that no one would dare to enter this land. The elder said that he saw the new recruit's limit. It was just a trick. Seo Wun-hui deliberately showed the weaknesses of his techniques. He didn't want to arouse suspicion. However, Seo Wun-hui couldn't help but exclaim with bitterness in his voice. Did Hayak-chan think that the true creator of the shining star technique would leave it unchanged after seeing the flaws in his design? The elder was angry. Seo Wun-hui felt the blood boiling in his veins. Hayak-chan suddenly realized that the young man was listening to the advice of the Southern Sky Sword. But the elder said aloud that there was no winner in this fight. Seo Wun-hui couldn't contain his emotions and became indignant. He shouted that if he had a little more time, he would have won a clear victory. Only Hayak-chan was hard to convince. Even Jabek's body nearby, plunged into unconsciousness, was unable to sway his opinion. Seo Wun-hui sincerely felt that the fight was unfair. His words sounded like the cry of a soul full of resentment and anger. Seo Wun-hui only had basic energy cultivation skills, while Jabek was learning techniques from Hayak-chan. He had a complete understanding of the weaknesses of the opponent's technique. In addition, Jabek had drunk some kind of elixir that boosted his internal energy. Hayak-chan even gave him his armbands. Despite all of this, Seo Wun-hui felt that he was on his way to winning the fight for the sake of losing. He felt like a pawn in Hayak-chan's game. The elder would not allow the battle to be fought if their forces were equal, and this thought only fueled Seo Wun-hui's anger. Hayak-chan laughed at his words, which only made the young man more resentful. The elder approached Jabek's body and tossed it into the air like a ball with his foot. Catching the young man by the face, the elder scornfully rebuked him for using his battle technique. Jabek was too inexperienced to intelligently use such powerful skills, and he paid for his carelessness with his health. Hayak-chan continued talking to Jabek, and the boy asked in bewilderment if what the elder gave him every night wasn't an elixir. At this moment, Hayak-chan clutched Jabek's face with his hand with such force as if he wanted to squeeze the stupidity out of him and called him a piece of idiot. His voice sounded disdainful, and he added that he wouldn't waste valuable elixir on such a fool. The elder then turned to Seo Wun-hui. He explained that he hadn't taken disciples for a long time, but decided to reveal his metal transformation technique to the Song brothers. Their bodies were perfectly suited for this. The two of them had a high blood circulation rate, and their bodies stored internal energy faster. Hayak-chan didn't hide the fact that this technique could have ruined them. To balance the negative effects, he gave the brothers velvet tree bark extract. At Seo Wun-hui's disposal was the Southern Heaven Iron Sword, which although ancient, was still superior to any ordinary sword. Jabek couldn't go into the battlefield empty-handed, so Hayak-chan gave him the armbands. The Southern Sky Sword avatar confirmed the elder's words. Hayak-chan laughed again, his laughter sounding like a mockery, as the duel had actually been arranged so that he himself would win. The recruits were indeed his pawns, and this realization caused Seo Wun-hui to have mixed feelings. However, that did not change the fact that he had lied to the elder. For this reason, there was no winner in the fight, and the fight was considered null and void. Hayak-chan said that these pawns were now to become his disciples. Seo Wun-hui was stunned when he heard this, and a glimmer of hope shone in his eyes. They would become the disciples of the elder. Hayak-chan felt sorry for throwing away such sturdy and talented guys, and it emphasized his wisdom. The elder saw the potential in these new recruits, and Seo Wun-hui, full of gratitude, thanked Hayak-chan heartily for this honor. He felt a surge of pride, realizing that his skills acquired with the help of Sodom and Southern Sky had been accepted by the elder as an innate talent. The avatars cheered him up because being able to hear them was a real talent. But at the same time, Seo Wun-hui realized that it was too early to relax. Seo Wun-hui was determined to ask the elder to teach him the metal transformation technique. However, Hayak-chan wisely replied that his body was unlikely to bear such a load. Instead, the elder offered to help develop his sword skills, which was just as important. At this moment, Hai Akshon asked if Seo Wun-hui knew that the technique he used in battle was developed by a swordsman from Yunnan province. Seo Wun-hui reacted in surprise, as if it was the first time he had heard of it. Southern Sky and Sodom watched with interest at how skillfully he was pretending. The elder explained that after Ho Jongdai's death, he was the only one left with the Shining Star technique. He was willing to help Seo Wun-hui master her perfectly. It was an unheard-of generosity. When he hesitated, realizing the importance of this proposal, while Sodom and Southern Sky were ready to support any decision he made. Finally, after much thought, Seo Wun-hui, the middle-ranked warrior, greeted his teacher, which brought a smile to Hei Achan's face. This decision was an important step in his journey, and he felt he was making the right choice in accepting his elder's support. At this time, Wu Hyun was carefully helping his brother to his feet. He called out to the elder and worriedly asked what was going to happen to them. With a sly smile on his lips, Hai Achan replied that the brothers were not to his liking, but he couldn't leave them because he had taught them a few things. The elder promised to accept them both as disciples, and at that moment, Jiabayek's joy was unbounded. His eyes glistened with happiness. Both brothers expressed deep respect for their teacher, and their faces shone with pride. Hei Achan congratulated the recruits on this important event in their lives. With a sly smile, Seo Wun-hui was happy that he had two younger companions since he had been named the first student. At this moment, Jiabayek was at a loss for words, unable to believe his ears. The elder was amused by the situation and couldn't hold back a smile as he watched his brother's reactions. Jiabayek, overwhelmed with emotion, began to resent him. After all, Hei Achan laughed at the mention of swordsman Ho Jongdai's name. His laughter sounded like a victory hymn emphasizing the irony of the situation. Just Seo Wun-hui rolled his eyes at this scene, feeling slightly annoyed. Southern Sky immediately refused to help him, since he had become the disciple of this madman. Hei Achan decided to visit the tomb of Ho Jongdai, the swordsman. When he approached the skeleton, the elder greeted it as if it were alive. His voice sounded respectful. The elder asked him a question without even hoping for an answer. Meanwhile, Southern Sky was telling Sodom and Seo Wun-hui about his previous owner's last day. One day, the Southern swordsman received an invitation to a duel that included a time and place. The letter was accompanied by a flower cut in half. Ho Jongdai had been through many battles, but he was unusually excited that day. The enemy, however, he was so powerful that the duel only lasted 40 seconds. Ho Jongdai was defeated and found his final resting place in a cave behind a waterfall. Southern Sky's face was sad. Seo Wun-hui wanted to ask something, but decided to wait for another opportune moment. Saying, Wu Hyun, judging from Southern Heaven's reaction to the question about his master, he had left something out. It was strange that a master from Yunnan province was buried in Guangdong province. How could such a powerful man get quests incompatible with life in just 40 seconds? In addition, it seems that after the fight, Ho Jongdai was alive for a while. Maybe he came to the cave to recuperate. At that, Southern Sky said that his master had been searching for a disciple for a long time, but had not met a single worthy person along the way. Since Seo Wun-hui recalled the gruesome injuries on the skeleton, broken jaw, arms, and legs, it was cruel, and a cold wave of horror crept into his heart. The villain Seo Wun-hui clenched his teeth and felt anger and despair building up inside him at these terrifying thoughts. Unwittingly, he himself had become Ho Jongdai's successor and the owner of his sword. How painful it was for Southern Sky to watch his master being tortured. These memories were too much of a burden for the Avatar, and Seo Wun-hui decided not to touch on the subject again to avoid adding to the pain. Meanwhile, Sodom tried to elicit the villain's name from Southern Sky, but he promised to tell her later. Sodom sympathized sympathetically. Her eyes filled with warmth and concern as she patted him gently on the shoulder. She was sure that Seo Wun-hui didn't understand anything. Sodom promised to change the topic immediately to keep South Sky from asking. Southern Sky caught Seo Wun-hui's reaction and realized that the guy suspected something. Sodom, noticing his wariness, asked how he realized it. Then Southern Sky replied that sometimes words are not necessary, for there is a special bond between the sword and its master based on understanding and feelings. These words hurt Sodom and caused a storm of emotion. She considered herself to be Seo Wun-hui's main sword and couldn't accept that someone else could take that place. Full of rage, Sodom pounced on Southern Sky and started pounding him to express her jealousy. Their fussing woke up Seo Eun-hui, who opened his eyes. He stood up and noticed Hei Ah-chan, his teacher, who was watching with a disgruntled expression. Seo Eun-hui greeted the teacher, but instead of the expected response, he received a fist to the head, causing him to feel the usual sense of resentment. Hei Ah-chan started scattering the students, scolding them for being lazy. His voice sounded stern and commanding. Suddenly, the boys noticed a huge cauldron and a bag of food. Hei Ah-chan said happily that this was the first time he had taken students, so it was an occasion to be celebrated. Laughing, the elder added, with a mischievous twinkle in his eye, that until they had finished all their drinks, no one would go to bed. The students looked at Hei Ah-chan with curiosity and delight. Each of them dreamed of being the first to taste this mysterious drink. The party was clearly a success, and the atmosphere was filled with laughter and joy. The next morning, Seo Eun-hui yawned and walked out of the abode. It was snowing, and the cold wind was stinging his cheeks. Jae-baek came out after him and asked curiously what Seo Eun-hui was doing. He asked how his comrade was feeling. Jae-baek's cheek was swollen from the bruise he'd received from the elder during last night's drinking. Remembering Hei Ah-chan telling the guys about how he was once rejected by a woman, Jae-baek couldn't help but laugh and got what he deserved. Seo Eun-hui smiled, remembering this funny incident, and felt the fun of last night still hovering in the air. He asked Jae-baek with a wry smile why he addressed him formally. After all, Seo Eun-hui was Hei Ah-chan's senior apprentice. With a serious expression on his face, Jae-baek reminded Seo Eun-hui that he owed him a favor. In the fight with Captain Oh Jae-baek, Seo Eun-hui was a great help, but Seo Eun-hui slyly reminded him of the bet. The one who had been defeated in yesterday's fight was to become the winner's slave. The boy, with a touch of sarcasm, offered his comrade a choice of 3 options. Either Jae-baek calls him senior from now on, or he calls him master, or they would fight again. Jae-baek's throat was dry with excitement. Coughing, he said with some embarrassment that he was ready to call Seo Eun-hui senior. Seo Eun-hui pretended not to hear and asked him to repeat it louder. Jae-baek obeyed with an inner protest, even though his pride was swelling. It seemed to him that his internal energy was more powerful than Seo Eun-hui's, and it gave him a feeling of injustice. Sodom chuckled at Jae-baek, who didn't know that Seo Eun-hui was actually restraining himself in the fight with him, and that only added fuel to the fire. At this time, Hei Ah-chan came out of the cave and greeted the guys with a slight chuckle, calling them lucky brats. The elder suddenly grabbed Seo Eun-hui by the scruff of his neck and rushed down, jumping from rock to rock. Seo Eun-hui still couldn't get used to this kind of movement, and his heart beat faster. After a short time, the travelers arrived in the valley. There was also a powerful healer there. Gu Sang-woon was sitting in one of the huts and had come to receive treatment. Suddenly, the door of the hut was shattered, and someone broke in with force. Hei Ah-chan appeared on the doorstep, holding Seo Eun-hui like a doll. The elder said he brought this young man to heal him. Seo Eun-hui's only dream at this moment was to be left alone and not to be ridiculed. Suddenly, someone appeared in the room and told him to stop rampaging. Hei Ah-chan turned his head and saw a woman enter. Her face was as white as snow, and her hair as black as coal. She was the 6th star of the blood cult, named Han Baek-ha. She looked at him with interest, and asked a question about who the child with Hei Ah-chan was. Seo Eun-hui boldly introduced himself, but was immediately kicked in the face by the elder. Hei Ah-chan, ignoring Seo Eun-hui's confusion, he ordered him to shut up and stop bowing down because his teacher was with him. At this, the healer offered the elder tea, but Hei Ah-chan rudely refused, which caused Sodom to be surprised and bewildered. Hei Ah-chan didn't waste the moment with a determined expression and asked the healer to heal his disciple's energy core. For this, he saw that the healer had many plaques from influential people, and against their background, his own plaque was of little value. Hei Ah-chan couldn't contain his emotions and laughed, but his laughter was nervous. He grabbed Seo Eun-hui's head and lifted him into the air. The elder said that if the young man did not restore his dantian, he would use up his innate energy. Hei Ah-chan was not shy about his words and shamed the healer, saying that he could not be called a healer by refusing this unfortunate child. The elder turned to the healer again, defiantly asking if he could treat split skulls, and squeezed Seo Eun-hui's head harder, causing pain. An inexpressible anger swept over Hei-achan. He couldn't believe that the healer could so easily ignore his requests. With a shriek of despair, he headed resolutely for the door, determined to deal with an important patient. At this, Hei-achan felt his anger slowly begin to subside, but still remained agitated. He gathered his emotions were boiling inside him, and now he could ask her in full voice if what she said was really true. If it was once out, he pondered the healer's mysterious patient, and troubling questions arose in his mind about who could be so important. Sudam curiously asked Seo Eun-hui if he knew who the mysterious patient was. He felt a wave of bewilderment. The young man replied that he had no idea who Hei-achan would show deference to. Southern Sky noted that Sodom was asking two strange questions. How could... These words struck Southern Sky hard, and his eyes reflected incredible surprise. Seo Eun-hui grinned. After remembering the location of the food warehouse, Seo Eun-hui went inside with hope. There was a girl sitting in the room, eating meat greedily. The girl then blushed embarrassedly and asked Seo Eun-hui to forget what he saw, because she had to stick to her diet. She anxiously asked Seo Eun-hui not to tell anyone about it. In return, the stranger handed him the coins, and her eyes were hopeful. At this moment, Hei-achan appeared. His stern voice resounded in the air as he beckoned his disciple to come closer. Seo Eun-hui panicked and quickly ran towards the elder, and the girl tried to hold him back while desperately shouting after him. When Seo Eun-hui ran up to Hei-achan, he accidentally fell to the ground in front of him. Hei-achan slapped him on the head for that. The elder grumbled at his slowness and asked him where he was. Seo Eun-hui explained confusingly that he was looking for the kitchen for a drink of water. Suddenly, he heard a voice in his head. It told him to keep quiet about the incident at the food warehouse. Seo Eun-hui realized that it was the same girl who had entered his thoughts. He didn't give her away even though he was excited. Except he couldn't resist, and his thoughts were confused. Hei-achan quickly covered his eyes with his hand and said that this woman was not allowed to look at his eyes. Seo Eun-hui was too inexperienced and became dizzy. Protecting Hei-achan's disciple asked Six Star not to do anything stupid. Whenever the healer needed a medicinal herb so he could help Seo Eun-hui restore the dantian. However, the healer also said that the first person to bring the flower would get any plaque from his collection. But it was winter. It was difficult to find the flower, even if they knew where it was. Hei-achan was worried that Han Baek-ha wouldn't interfere. Suddenly, he had told the thing. This news hit Seo Eun-hui like a thunderclap, and he was speechless. Shock and genuine surprise mingled in his soul. It meant the blood demon was not just a name, but a legend, causing fear and respect in the blood cult. His charisma and power allowed him to unite disparate sects and dark masters, creating a powerful force that threatened all in its path. The orthodox sects, once immersed in their differences, have come together, realizing that only together can they stop this darkness. Seo Eun-hui revealed that even the incomparable greatest of all had decided to join this alliance to challenge the blood demon. In that brutal battle soaked with passion and rage, the blood demon received wounds that proved to be incurable. However, news came out of the blue. The blood demon had a descendant. Seo Eun-hui and Sodom anxiously discussed the shocking circumstances. Seo Eun-hui hypothesized that a miraculous healing flower would be needed to heal this mysterious heir. If he manages to get it, he can win the favor of a powerful blood cult figure, which will help him become stronger and more powerful. Sudam, full of impatience, asked if he was going to go in search of the flower. Seo Eun-hui answered in the affirmative with determination in his voice. However, Seo Eun-hui still couldn't see the flower because the flower was asleep. The divine healer himself took 4 whole days to find it. But the young man knew one important detail. When the sun went down and all the people dispersed, he was going to go on a search. At that moment, he felt someone's gaze on him and his heart sank. Anxiety squeezed his chest as he realized that someone was following him. It was the same girl that Seo Eun-hui ran into at the food warehouse. The boy stopped. His breathing became rapid and his thoughts confused. With a shudder in his chest, he gathered all his determination and raised a dusting of snow into the air. He hoped that this unexpected trick would help him confuse his pursuer. The maneuver worked. The girl's view was blocked. Meanwhile, Seo Eun-hui climbed up the bamboo so that the stranger would lose sight of him. Seo Eun-hui quickly looked up and saw the girl looming over him, her eyes glittering with magical fire. She hypnotized him with her gaze like a predator ready to attack its prey. The next second, she lunged downward, trying to strike. The girl looked at him with disdain and said that she didn't expect such power from a person with a destroyed dantian. She used an unknown technique that seemed intimidating and powerful to him. The stranger was as fast and agile as the wind. Seo Un-hui recognized her witch skills in her movements, and it scared him. His strength was running low, and he knew he had to find a way to resist her. There was only one chance to stop the fight. He had to get the stranger to talk to him. Seo Un-hui realized that time was playing against him. If he didn't do something now, the consequences could be catastrophic. The girl asked why the boy had started the blizzard. It was an unexpected question that only added fuel to the fire of his irritation. Seo Un-hui answered the question with a question about why she was following him. She explained that she thought it was suspicious that he disappeared in the middle of the night. He freaked out and shouted why she cared where he was going. The girl gave him an angry look and explained that she had guessed that Seo Un-hui knew where to find the healing flower. That surprised him. He wondered how she knew that. In an attempt to avoid a direct answer, he decided to lie and say that it would be crazy to look for the flower at night. Then she introduced herself and gave her name. It was a 6th star student named Hae-young. She was also a friend of the divine healer's mysterious patient. Seo Un-hui became wary and wondered who he was dealing with. He didn't want to share the information with her, so he decided to cut her some slack by telling her he guessed where to find the flower, but he wasn't going there today. Hae-young asked to take her along, and in return, she promised to give up all her plaques with the right to enter the Divine Healer Pavilion. Seo Un-hui was in no hurry to make a decision, realizing that every word he said could have consequences. Sudam, watching him ponder, asked what he was thinking about, because Hae-young's offer seemed very favorable. The young man realized that to Hae-young, the plaques had no value. She even paid him in coins for small favors, which only confirmed his doubts. Hae-young warned him that there was no point in running anymore. This prompted Seo Un-hui to think about strengthening his position in this conversation. He offered to increase the reward for cooperation to improve their trust. Hae-young hesitated, and he realized that his offer had aroused interest. But when Seo Un-hui asked her to teach him a move he had seen her do, she objected that it was rude to ask for another master's technique. Seo Un-hui, realizing that he had no more moves, replied that he wouldn't cooperate with her then. This convinced Hae-young, and she asked him to promise that he would use this technique as a last resort if he needed to take someone's life. Sodom and Southern Sky were amazed at how easily Hae-young agreed to such a condition. It showed that friendship and trust were important to her. Seo Un-hui grinned in satisfaction, agreed to the terms, and they struck hands in agreement. Hae-young noticed that he was using his innate core energy and was surprised. She realized that this was Seo Un-hui's way of approaching his end. The girl advised him to stop wasting it. Seo Un-hui explained that he couldn't do that because he didn't have dantian. He asked her how she knew he knew where to find the flower. Hae-young replied that his demeanor gave him away, and her confidence added to his excitement. Everyone in the Six Blood Valley was busy searching for the healing flower except Seo Un-hui, and this alarmed her. When Hae-young was chasing him, she realized that he was running in a certain direction, meaning he knew the end point. Seo Un-hui realized that Hae-young was quite intelligent, and it made him respect her. He asked her to address him informally by his first name. This hurt Hae-young, who was not older than him and was a student, although her ego was a little hurt. Finally, they reached the cliff, and Seo Un-hui said that they would have to go down. His voice sounded firm, even though his emotions were raging inside him. Hae-young asked if he'd told anyone about the incident in the cafeteria. The guy assured her that he hadn't talked to anyone about it. Even though he didn't get his coins, then he would now get something more valuable, and there was hope in his voice. When they reached the bottom of the gorge and saw a beautiful flower glowing in the night, Seo Un-hui felt his heart beat faster. He reached out his hand towards it, and in that moment, excitement and fear intertwined in his soul. Seo Un-hui picked the flower and looked at the girl. Hae-young was very happy that they had found the flower. She breathed out a sigh of relief and smiled, and said that she wanted to go back soon. Seo Un-hui, feeling joy filling his heart, was handing the flower into Hae-young's hands when he suddenly heard a warning from the southern sky. At this moment, unknown people appeared from somewhere and attacked them. Seo Un-hui felt his heart beat faster with surprise and fear. The attackers were very skillful warriors, and it came as a shock to both of them. Neither Seo Wun-hui nor Ha Young noticed they were being followed and were now trapped. The unknown masked man took the flower from Ha Young and said with a smirk that following them was the right decision. He ordered his accomplices to knock out the children and quickly leave the place. Ha Young was terrified and shouted who they were, but the answer was only laughter. Seo Wun-hui, sensing the growing threat, grabbed his sword, but he was instantly grabbed by the arm without being able to attack. The stranger looked at him apologetically, mentioning that he was an elder's apprentice, then used a painful technique. Seo Wun-hui couldn't stand on his feet and fell down, his consciousness gradually leaving his body. Ha-young screamed in panic when she saw Seo Wun-hui lying unconscious. She knew it was risky to leave him here, but she wanted to catch up with the kidnappers. Meanwhile, the thieves began to move away, climbing up the cliff. Ha-young gathered all her courage and decided to pursue them despite the dangers. She had to leave Seo Wun-hui without help. At this time, Seo Wun-hui opened his eyes and barely realized that the stranger had pressed on his acupuncture points. He felt his energy starting to return and tried to get up. Southern Sky was concerned and asked him if he was all right. Seo Wun-hui felt that his innate energy had protected him, and the consequences of this reception were not as dire as they might have seemed. However, at this moment, Sudam was watching the situation and became furious. She couldn't believe that Ha-young had dumped Seo Wun-hui because of a flower. Sudam told Seo Wun-hui to immediately go after the kidnappers, but the guy was hesitant and full of doubts. He wasn't sure if he should do it. Seo Wun-hui told the avatars that the flower was immature, and Southern Sky and Sodom were amazed. The fact is that the fruit of the flower changes as it grows. A fully mature plant should have 7 formed fruits emitting a green glow, while the stolen flower had 5 yellow fruits. There were many such unsuitable flowers growing in the area, and the plant they needed was in the shade behind the waterfall. Seo Wun-hui was determined and rushed there. In the dark cave, he couldn't see anything at first, but soon he and Sodom saw a green light. The boy's soul was filled with joy and hope when he realized that it was the same flower. It was so cold it was painful to touch. With care, Seo Wun-hui dug it up, being careful not to damage the roots. This flower could be the key to their salvation and success in their endeavors. Suddenly Sodom heard a faint voice. She looked around and noticed a rusty, broken blade off to the side. Sodom called Seo Wun-hui to talk to him, but the young man had no time. She moved closer to the blade and listened to his words. Only she couldn't make them out. Finally, she understood what he was trying to tell her. He was warning them of danger and telling them to get out of here as fast as they could. Sodom shouted in horror to Seo Wun-hui to hurry up and get away, but it was too late. A huge monster appeared from the darkness, and Seo Wun-hui's heart beat faster with fear. The monster looked like a huge lizard. With a flick of its tail, it tossed Seo Wun-hui into the air. Taking out his Southern Sky sheath, Seo Wun-hui prepared for battle. No one knew what kind of creature had attacked them, and that added to the tension. It was too dark in the cave, and Seo Wun-hui couldn't fight because he couldn't see anything. It's a good thing he grabbed the flower in time. Now he had to get to the exit somehow. He saw the waterfall and rushed toward it, feeling hope, fighting panic. But the monster could see perfectly well in the darkness and watched him like a hunter watching his prey. Seo Wun-hui could feel its gaze on him. Southern Sky warned Seo Wun-hui that the enemy was approaching. The monster was very agile. The sword advised Seo Wun-hui to dodge and strike sharply. The young man wasn't sure if the maneuver would work, but he had to try. Gathering all his strength and concentration, Seo Wun-hui activated the Shining Star technique once more, but this time with double the power. However, the monster was still alive, albeit frightened. It began to behave more cautiously. Sudam recommended that Seo Wun-hui take this chance to attack. Concentrating all his energy, the young man executed a sharp blow that seemed to split the air. At that moment, his sword shone with a bright light. Combining the techniques of reflecting clam and breaking tiger, Seo Wun-hui's attack was deadly. Southern Sky exclaimed in surprise that Seo Wun-hui had finished off the monster, while Sodom was overjoyed and cheered, as if she had just won the battle. But suddenly, Seo Wun-hui became dizzy and bowed to the ground in a wave of weakness. Sodom, noticing his condition, anxiously rushed over to him and quietly asked what was going on with him. Seo Wun-hui, holding onto his chest, felt an unbearable heat spreading from within. His heart beat faster with fear when he realized that the monster was poisonous and had managed to wound him. The poison was rapidly spreading through his body like a stream of fire, and his internal energy could not handle this threat. His whole body was on fire, and he realized that time was running out. With each passing second, hope was slipping away, and he struggled with panic. Seo Un-hui was frantically thinking, but the clarity of thought was leaving him. Panic gripped his mind, and the heat inside him seemed unbearable. He had to think of a way to quench this blazing fire. The only thing he could think of was to eat the healing flower. He swallowed some of the flower, and his throat felt cold, as if he'd drunk a bucket of ice water. It became harder to breathe. Fear gripped him. The heat and frost were tearing his body, causing unbearable pain. Sodom noticed his condition and told him to mix the two states. Seo Un-hui had to take control of his internal energy. It was impossible to hesitate. He couldn't die so foolishly without accomplishing his mission. The young man gathered his thoughts through clenched teeth and calmed down. He managed to take control of what was happening and stabilize his mind. Suddenly, he felt his body glow with a blue light. Seo Un-hui saw the constellation of the Big Dipper on his arm, and his heart grew warm. Seo Un-hui heard the voice that had spoken to him the first time he saw the blue flame again. It distracted him, and he lost his concentration. Suddenly, his body began to tear from the inside, and Seo Un-hui screamed in pain. Every cell in his body was fighting itself, and fear gripped him. The two forces within him were in confrontation, and it was causing him unbearable suffering. The voice told him not to interrupt the circulation of energy. Southern Sky advised to channel the two energies into the same direction with the internal flow, and Seo Un-hui realized that this was his only chance. He tried to listen to their words and focus on what needed to be done. Seo Un-hui visualized his innate energy as a lake. The two streams represented the two rivers that made their way to the lake. He visualized these rivers merging into one. Seo Un-hui concentrated on his sensations and how freely the energy flowed. Finally, the storm inside him subsided. The young man felt very good, and his body was filled with lightness. He sighed with a smile when Sodom asked him if he was all right. The boy replied confidently that the trouble was over and that he had been helped by the Southern Sky. Sodom was very surprised at this and asked if she had heard correctly, but Seo Un-hui was sure it was his voice he heard. Sodom explained that the sword of the Southern Sky was too far away, so he couldn't hear it. The recruit felt that the heavens had opened up to him, and now he could hear the voice of the southern heaven from a distance. He walked over to the sword and grasped the hilt. Stars flashed on his hand. He felt the magical energy filling him. Sodom was jealous that there was a connection between the Southern Sky and Seo Un-hui. Seo Un-hui came closer to the monster's remains and looked at it curiously. Southern Sky made a suggestion. The creature might have been immortal, but it was injured. Seo Un-hui suddenly stumbled and fell into the ravine, causing Sodom to worry. She asked him again how he was feeling, to which he confidently replied that he was fine. The voice of the Southern Sky sounded in his mind again. He advised to apply the inner core energy to explore his internal organs. Seo Un-hui tried to use this advice. Suddenly, he realized that the volume of his energy had increased significantly. He realized that the extreme conditions had helped him to develop his abilities. The monster venom and the healing flower extract he had used earlier had strengthened Seo Un-hui's innate energy core. The young man was truly thankful that circumstances had turned out this way. As a result of his experiences, his total energy reserve surpassed the level of a first-class martial artist. When Sodom heard this, she exclaimed that she had a great idea. They still had one more healing flower left. Since Seo Un-hui could now control the poison and the cold, Sodom advised him to repeat the same thing again. She explained that if the young man survived this time, his innate core energy would increase again. He would become an incredible martial artist. Seo Un-hui and Southern Sky listened skeptically to this rambling suggestion. The guy turned around and walked away, leaving the short sword, Sodom, in the cave. The avatar pleaded in a pitiful voice not to leave the only memory of his mother in this uncomfortable place. Realizing he wasn't kidding, Sodom threw a tantrum and, apologizing for her behavior, asked him to take her away. Meanwhile, the flower thieves were on their way to the Valley of Six Bloods. One of them was clearly tired because it was a long journey. His name was Captain Mac and Hong. The other was making fun of him and his build. It was Captain Sa-hyun. They talked about what a great idea it was to follow Seo Un-hui. The captain's companion couldn't understand how a guy with a destroyed dantian could fight. Suddenly, one of them noticed a scarlet glow behind them. Ha-young had caught up with them. She attacked them with the Blood Witch technique and told them to return the flower. The cultists were amazed at the agility of the overweight girl, who seemed clumsy. Captain Sah-hyun realized that if he launched a frontal attack, it might confuse her. They entered the battle, but the sixth star appeared out of nowhere and interfered in the fight. Both captains were stunned to see her. Ha-young took the flower from their hands and clutched it to her chest as if it were her most precious possession. Sixth star was outraged at how dare they attack her student. If Ha-young was hurt, they wouldn't be able to get away with it. When she saw what Ha-young was holding, she was incredibly surprised. Sixth star couldn't hold back a cry of surprise when she learned that the cultists had tried to steal the flower from Ha-young. She took the flower from the girl and told her to go home. However, Ha-young excitedly told her that she had one more important thing to do. She had to return to the gorge. These words surprised Sixth Star. She was curious as to why her student had to return to this place. At this time, Seo Woon-hui was just getting out of the gorge. Now he could do it in one leap because his physical abilities had increased significantly. When Seo Woon-hui saw Ha-young's figure approaching in the distance, his eyesight had clearly improved because the avatars hadn't seen the girl from such an impressive distance. Seo Woon-hui noted her willpower and endurance. Not every person could endure such a long chase. Southern Sky assured the guy that he could do just as well. After meeting Seo Woon-hui, the girl apologized for leaving him alone. She was glad that nothing bad had happened to him. The young man reassured Ha-young that he was fine. However, she noticed that there was something wrong with his leg. The girl excitedly asked what happened, but Seo Woon-hui said it was just a scratch. The boy changed the subject to the healing flower. He couldn't wait to find out if Ha-young had caught up with the kidnappers and had managed to get the plant back. The girl embarrassedly said that her mentor had helped her, and as soon as the flower was safe, she immediately rushed to Seo Woon-hui's aid. The young man listened to this information with a dejected face, not knowing how to react. Ha-young immediately promised to give him the plaque as agreed. Only she didn't have the plaques. They all belonged to the sixth star. Seo Woon-hui realized that she wouldn't give one of them to her student. That means he'll never see the plaque again. Ha-young had no doubt that she would get it, but it was possible that Sixth Star would demand something in return. Seo Woon-hui's mood has completely soured. In the Sixth Blood Valley, a conversation was taking place between Hae-akon and Sixth Star. The witch asked the elder for something and promised to give him the plaque for fulfilling that request. Hae-achan was furious. He resented the fact that Sixth Star had interfered in his business despite his warning. Sixth Star stood her ground. She gave the elder a choice. Either he joins them, or a sad fate awaits him. The conversation between Han Baek-ha and Hae-achan continued. She firmly reminded the elder of the inevitable choice he would have to make. Hae-achan angrily waved away her words, unwilling to give in. The elder told her did she really think he would do this for the sake of a Dantian disciple. Without saying names, they were discussing someone who had to put their hands down. Han Baek-ha said that otherwise she wouldn't be able to hand over the plaque. When Seo Woon-hui and Ha-young entered the room, the atmosphere was filled with respect and slight awkwardness. They greeted their mentors. At that time, Hae-achan, who was in a bad mood, grabbed Seo Woon-hui's head and told him that he was late and that he would never get anything. Suddenly, the great healer's pavilion door swung open, and he sadly informed Han Baek-ha that he was sorry, but needed to get another flower. At that moment, her face contorted in fear that all their efforts had been in vain. Sixth Star asked him what was wrong. The healer replied that the plant was immature, and its healing properties were insufficient. Hae-akon heard this and laughed loudly, and one could hear gloating in his laughter. Seo Woon-hui, apologizing for being rude, tried to intervene in the conversation. His voice trembled with excitement. Sincerely hoping that his words would help prevent conflict, he said that he possessed a fully matured flower. The healer took it in his hands. He said the flower was exactly what he needed. It was an unusual coincidence that two people had found such a rarity at the same time. The healer took the flower in his hands and said it was just what he needed. What an unusual coincidence that two people found such a rarity at the same time. Hae-achan laughingly praised Seo Woon-hui, calling him a worthy disciple, and there was pride in his voice. Young, perplexed with wariness, mentally asked Seo Woon-hui why he kept this from her. In response, he said mentally that he had given her the flower according to their agreement, but that the agreement had been broken on her part, and there was resentment in his voice. Seo Un-hui, realizing the gravity of the situation, decided to ask Hai Achan if he had received the plaque as promised. The elder loudly stated that if Seo Un-hui wanted the plaque, he had to fulfill Han Baek-ha's request. At this moment, everyone stared questioningly at Sixth Star, and tension hung in the air. Han Baek-ha was confused, and her heart beat faster. Everyone was expecting her to do something, and she could feel the stares on her. Seo Un-hui tried to keep his optimism and smiled and asked him to take care of him. Ha Young had a displeased look on her face. She couldn't understand how this happened. A few hours ago, when Ha Young and Seo Un-hui had a conversation, the girl assured him that Sixth Star would definitely give him the plaque. Her voice sounded confident, but now she was having doubts. As agreed, Hae-young taught Seo Un-hui the special technique he asked about. Seo Un-hui had doubts about the reliability of the Sixth Star. He didn't know if he could trust it, and this feeling of unease never left him. Seo Un-hui couldn't influence Han Baek-ha's decision anyway, so he trusted Ha Young, who insisted on her mentor's honesty. The guy asked the girl to make a bet. Ha Young was surprised at first, but she listened to him with interest. The terms were simple. According to Ha Young, Sixth Star knew that they found the flower with Seo Un-hui, so her conscience won't let her deceive the guy and he'll get the plaque. If Han Baek-ha suddenly refuses to give up the plaque, in that case, Seo Un-hui should get something equally valuable. Ha Young said that Seo Un-hui acted like an extortionist, but was still wary of asking what he meant. The guy said that in case Han Baek-ha doesn't give the sign herself, Ha Yan will have to ask for it, because she is a friend of a powerful person. Now that they were standing in the healer's pavilion together with Han Baek-ha and Hai Achan, Sixth Star had separated two of his fingers before everyone's eyes. The people present were dumbfounded by such a bold act. Han Baek-ha sincerely apologized for treating Hai Achan with disrespect. Han Baek-ha humbly said that a whole hand would not be enough to atone for this guilt, but she needed the hand to fulfill important duties. Hai Achan accepted Sixth Star's apology with satisfaction, his face expressing understanding, but his eyes read wariness. She thanked him, as if she didn't notice her hand was bleeding. It only added to the drama of the situation. The healer sternly called for calm. He asked them not to do anything rash while an important patient was here. The elder firmly pressed him to hand Seo Un-hui the plaque as promised. His tone was impatient and slightly aggressive. The healer thoughtfully replied that he could spare a few minutes for Seo Un-hui. But if that wasn't enough, he could have him come by noon. The next day, Seo Un-hui went to the temple. Hai Achan's movement technique allowed him to move quickly and confidently. Suddenly, Sodom, being close by, decided to ask him about Hae Young. Why did everyone around him treat her like that? She couldn't understand what was so special about her. Sodom believed that under Ha Young's influence, some people were changing their opinions to the opposite, and it alarmed her a lot. She noticed how coldly the girl watched her mentor Han Baek-ha as she lost her fingers. Seo Un-hui agreed with Sudam and said that maybe the girl isn't just a student, and maybe she isn't who she says she is. Sudam then suggested that Ha Yeon was the daughter of the Sixth Star, but Seo Un-hui confidently said that she was the granddaughter of the Blood Demon. This news shocked the avatars, and they stared at him in surprise. South Sky asked how Seo Un-hui had guessed it, not believing his ears. The guy replied that perhaps the girl had gained weight from some ailment, and therefore she needed the divine healer's treatment. The appearance of the heiress of a cult leader was supposed to inspire fear and reverence, and now understanding that fact explained a lot. But who was actually in the healer's pavilion that day and whose mysterious silhouette they saw? Seo Un-hui speculated that it might be a doppelganger. The thought that the blood demon's heir would be a live target never left his mind. However, South Heaven did not like this version. It was unlikely that the members of the blood cult wanted to destroy the descendant of the one they worshipped. But what if the blood demon did have several descendants? The rivalry for clan supremacy could have dire consequences. As he entered the luxurious stone building, Seo Un-hui couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. He was blocked by several soldiers guarding an important person. With his newfound ability, he could hear the voices of other swordsmen, and his head spun with the many voices of eager battle. Southern Sky, noticing his condition, quietly advised him not to focus on them, but anxiety had already taken over his thoughts. Seo Un-hui gathered himself and used his innate core energy and directed it towards his head, trying to suppress the chaos. It helped him drown out most of the voices. But one of them, full of rage and bloodlust, kept shouting louder than the rest. A figure radiating power and strength approached Seo Woon Hui. He involuntarily felt awe at her presence. She suddenly asked how the young man had gotten to this temple. Her voice sounded wary. Seo Woon Hui's heart beat faster when he introduced himself, but before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt a swift attack in his direction. His breath froze in his chest, but luckily he managed to dodge. This maneuver surprised the stranger. Her eyes flashed with bewilderment and even admiration. Suddenly, there was a shrill cry that broke the silence. Ha Young's voice was anxious and ordered Seo Woon Hui not to be touched because he was the elder's disciple. His life was of the utmost importance. A stranger with fiery scarlet hair shining like a sunset smiled playfully at the news. She jokingly rebuked Seo Woon Hui for not reporting it sooner because she could have taken his life as if it was something ordinary. The stranger praised Seo Woon Hui's skills, admiring his ability to block her attacks. It wasn't easy, and there was sincerity in her voice. She then asked the guy how Hai Achan was doing with a tone, as if she herself held a high position. Seo Woon Hui noticed that her words sounded emphasized the difference in status. She went on to say that no one had seen Hai Achan for the past few years, like the second star, which sounded like a portent of trouble. At that moment, Hae-young couldn't contain her excitement and ran over to them and hurried the stranger away. But she replied with a cocky grin that she would only leave when she wanted to. With that, she lightly drew her sword, which glistened in the sun. Ha! Young glanced at him anxiously, realizing that the situation was becoming more and more dangerous. Suddenly, Ha Young became angry, and her silhouette flared with crimson flames as if reflecting her inner anger. The divine healer came out and called out to Seo Woon Hui when he saw him. The stranger was disappointed that their conversation had been interrupted and hurriedly excused herself. Before leaving, she asked with a slight smile to say hello to Hae-chan. Turning to Seo Woon Hui, the girl winked at him as if there was already a special bond between them and suggested that they fight the next time they met. Seo Woon Hui was petrified at the suggestion, unable to find the words. Sodom and Southern Sky had discouraged him from fighting, warning him of the risks. But what struck him the most was the sword of the stranger, whose voice he had heard earlier. This sword was literally suffering from lack of combat in anticipation of future battles. Seo Woon Hui turned to Ha Young and asked if everything was all right. But the girl said that the divine healer was waiting for him and he should hurry up. Suddenly, Seo Woon Hui felt a wave of unease when he realized that Ha Young had deliberately interrupted the conversation because she understood exactly what he was about to ask. A storm of emotions erupted inside him, and the guy gave himself a promise not to bring up the subject again, so as not to bring more problems on his head. Upon inspection, the divine healer noted with a discerning eye that there was much more cold energy concentrated in the young man's body than there should be. His thin lips tightened when he guessed that Seo Woon Hui had absorbed the healing flower that exuded coldness. The young man was amazed at how the healer could know that. The healer, with a kind smile, promised that he would never give away the patient's secret. His voice sounded confident and calm. He asked Seo Woon Hui to tell him what happened, and at that moment, the young man felt his load of secrets getting a little lighter. Sodom and Southern Sky, standing nearby, nodded favorably, confirming that the healer could be trusted. Then Seo Woon Hui began to tell how he had found the healing flower in the cave behind the waterfall. His voice trembled as he told about the monster in the cave. The healer frowned when he heard about the monster. It was more of a demon than a material creature, and the Lakar's eyes reflected sympathy. As it turned out, the monster was afraid of fire and would never attack a man with a torch. Seo Woon Hui explained that he ate the flower to escape its poison. However, the healer, with a puzzled expression, could not understand how the flower could purify the poison from the guy's body. His wise eyes studied Seo Woon Hui, and he saw that the young man's body contained cold and hot energies, as if the two forces were fighting each other. Seo Woon Hui felt his soul fill with hope when the healer explained that his innate core energy had displaced the monster's poison. It reminded him of how he had handled the bloodworm's poison, and he couldn't help but wonder what other abilities had been revealed to him. When the young man asked about the state of his body and possible danger, the healer reassured him. He explained that complications would arise if there was only one energy left in the body, but the cold and hot energies were balanced. It was like taking a magic elixir, and Seo Woon Hui couldn't believe his ears. He froze in amazement, realizing that he now had the ability to store his internal energy. The healer, noticing his surprise, added that to achieve this balance, one would have to constantly monitor one's actions and practices. He then handed Seo Wunhui his nameplate, explaining that it was a reward for the healing flower. Seo Wunhui asked the healer if he could cure his dantian. The healer smilingly replied that he had nothing to cure since his dantian was fine. The recruit was speechless. He couldn't believe that he was completely healthy, even though he didn't know it. If Seo Wunhui focused on his core, he would notice many small particles sparkling like stars in the night sky. These shards, into which his core shattered after the injury, were not just damaged parts, they symbolized his suffering and struggle. In time, they will be rekindled like a fire that rekindles hope, even in the darkest of times. The young man exclaimed with joy that his nucleus was regenerating by itself. The boy's heart fluttered with excitement, and he couldn't believe what was happening. The healer, with a wise smile on his face, answered in the affirmative, his voice sounding confident and reassuring. There were only a few such cases in history. Seo Wunhui felt a warmth spilling into his chest as he realized that he didn't need treatment and could now step into Hai Achan's abode. The joyful young man thanked the healer. His voice trembled with happiness, and taking the plaque, he left with a wide smile on his face. Sodom was cheering along with her master. Her joyous laughter filled the air and she could not hide her delight. It was an incredible fortune, like a gift from fate. She curiously asked Seo Wunhui how his dantian could recover on its own. His eyes shone with happiness when he explained that the wound inflicted by the monster had healed very quickly due to his control over the two energies. The core recovery speed had increased, and now Seo Wunhui could quickly heal any injury. Sudom joked that he should be grateful to the monster. Southern Sky didn't share in everyone's joy. His face was serious and his voice was full of worry. He explained that his former master, focusing on techniques to cultivate inner core energy, had destroyed his own dantian. His eyes read anxiety as he added that he was worried about what would happen if two cores existed in Seo Wunhui at the same time. The boy needed to think carefully about his situation. He realized that he was facing a serious choice and that his actions could have consequences. At last, he reached the abode. Hai Achan, who had heard about his disciple's adventure, called Seo Wunhui a lucky man with a slight chuckle. His voice sounded with a note of envy when he realized that the guy had met two blood demon heiresses at once. Sodom and Southern Sky, sitting side by side, exchanged looks of surprise as they realized that Seo Wunhui was right in his assumptions. Hai Achan said with a deep sigh that Han Bak Ha was right. The elder would have to take sides in this confusing conflict. Flames of memories lit up in his eyes as he recalled the times when the cult head was incredibly powerful. He spoke with awe about how he led not only the blood cult, but also an entire community of Orthodox sects, inspiring his followers. Achan couldn't hide his sense of despair when he said that defeat was inevitable. Too many forces had united against the blood demon. The feeling of losing the meaning of life made him wander for a long time in search of a new purpose. He finally found a new meaning in life: victory over the Southern Swordsman. Seo Wunhui listened to this story and felt his own heart fill with understanding. He realized that Hai Achan wasn't so crazy. However, Achan couldn't ignore the blood demon seeds that were so diligently sprouting into beautiful flowers. The elder slowly turned to Seo Wunhui and asked what the young man would do in his place. Seo Wunhui thought about it for a moment. He looked at the elder carefully and suddenly realized from his gaze that he had already made a decision. Seo Wunhui's answer was no longer necessary. He said he could just watch the flowers bloom. But if that wasn't what Hai Achan wanted to do, then it was worth devoting himself to preparing the fertilizer. Memories of his past life surfaced in his mind again, and the young man remembered how Hai Achan didn't take sides. But now the elder said that they would need even more strength. Seo Wunhui didn't expect to hear this and was literally stunned. The elder confidently told him that it didn't matter which side he was on because he would need fertilizer anyway. Hai Achan looked at Seo Wunhui seriously and said that the new recruit had 6 months to become a captain. The guy realized that the future is changing right now, and every step he makes now will determine not only his fate, but the fate of everyone around him. Seo Wunhui could only speculate what might happen to Hai Achan after the blood cult was restored. In the future, the elder will be given clear instructions for action, but he will not follow them. It would be against his nature. But such behavior would lead Hai Achan to a clash of interests and a duel with Jin Gyu. It was one of the 8 strongest masters, who was also known as the Flame King. In that battle, Hai Achon lost his arm and suffered other injuries, but that was not to happen until 6 years later. Sodom said that this future might not have come to pass, because the elder had decided to remain neutral and not to increase his power. Seo Wunhui realized that things were already taking a different turn. He used to be a low-ranking cadet. Now he had become an elder's apprentice and seemed to have established contact with the Blood Demon's heirs. Every move he made next could change everything. Southern Sky said that the young man's present carries a lot of possibilities. If Hai Achan got close to the top of the blood cult, it would be a great start for Seo Unhui. He was now faced with the task of becoming the captain. A guy had to learn how to absorb yin and yang properly, and also the innate and internal energies must exist in harmony in him. Sodom asked Southern Sky if he knew any cultivation techniques. He replied that he knew the technique used by the Southern Swordsman, but as a result, he destroyed his own dantian. In order for Seo Wunhui's blood to circulate faster, his veins needed to be strengthened. Suddenly, the boy had an epiphany. He knew how to do it himself, but without the avatars, he would never have figured it out. It was a full metal transformation technique. Seo Wunhui hurriedly found Jabek and asked him to show the technique. He and Wuhyun were busy practicing together, but the man said that Hai Achan had expressly forbidden him to tell him anything about the technique. Seo Wunhui explained that if the elder was in the abode right now, he would have asked him. The young man decided to annoy Jabek. He said he just wanted to build a relationship and bond as equal disciples of the elder. Seo Unhui turned around to leave, but Jabek grabbed his leg, dropping Wuhyun. The twin brother knew that Seo Unhui's core had recovered. In his case, it was strange to learn only one technique. Jabek was willing to show him metal transformation just to be on the same level as him. Seo Unhui's ploy worked. With a sly smile, he agreed to let go of convention and call him an equal. After 3 days, Seo Unhui managed to speed up the flow of energy within himself, but at the same time, the guy felt a strong rush of blood to his head. He remembered the time when Hai Achan would hang him upside down. However, Jabek and Wuhyun could bat like that. Seo Unhui's body wasn't as strong as theirs. That's why Hai Achan didn't teach him this technique. Suddenly, Seo Unhui felt someone's presence. An unfamiliar girl stood behind him and greeted him. She said that 6th Star sent her after him. Seo Unhui had no choice but to follow her. At 6th Star's residence, he met up with Han Baek Ha, who was surprised by the bet made with Ha Young. After all, she was offering her nameplate as a prize, as well as the Divine Healer plate. Seo Wunhui tried to make excuses, but Han Baek Ha interrupted his speech, saying that Ha Young couldn't be present for the meeting right now. 6th Star held out the sign to him, and the boy saw that the 2 fingers she had lost earlier were back on her hand. Sodom suggested that the healer was able to heal her arm. She joked about whether he could put the severed head back on. Suddenly, Han Baek Ha grabbed his wrist and her eyes lit up with scarlet fire. It was a mysterious technique that he couldn't fight back. The 6th Star's internal energy was penetrating Seo Wunhui. He screamed trying to stop it, but Han Baek Ha told him to be quiet. She felt that the guy had used up far less innate energy than expected. Seo Unhui didn't understand what she was getting at. Finally, it stopped. The 6th Star let him go and pointed to the herbs that had been prepared for the young man. He had to take it and use it to restore Dantian. Han Baek Ha advised him to keep the plaque from He Young because it was very precious. Seo Unhui realized that 6th Star, even as a skilled martial artist, hadn't noticed that the guy's Dantian was fine. He wanted to leave the place quickly, but he was unable to do so. Suddenly, Han Baek Ha offered the young man a bet. He was surprised and intrigued by this unexpected offer. 6th Star calmed him down by saying that she wouldn't take He Young's nameplate. She just wanted to take revenge for her student. Seo Wunhui, assuming that this matter would not end well, asked 6th Star to take it back. However, as a winnings, Han Baek Ha offered to teach him something. Seo Unhui became wary. He wondered what it could be, but the young man didn't want any more trouble. He said he wasn't worthy of such a high honor. Only 6th Star didn't seem to hear him. Han Baek Ha asked the guy to talk to his teacher Hai Action in case she won. 6th Star wanted him to reconsider his decision. Seo Wunhui was amazed at her cunning. Han Baek Ha seemed to be trying to get the elder on her side by any means necessary. Sodom was prompting the young man to accept the offer. For him, the deal was favorable in any case. Even if he lost, he had nothing to lose because he was used to being beaten by Hayak Zhang. Seo Eun-hui decided to clarify what the argument would be about. A girl appeared from behind Han Baek-ha and greeted the guy. She looked pleased as if she was happy to see him. Only Seo Eun-hui didn't remember her for hurting the girl's ego. It turned out that they had come to the Valley of Six Bloods together when the cultists stole the children. Seo Eun-hui smiled embarrassedly as he was more concerned about his own fate. Han Baek-ha introduced her new student, whose name was Dam Ye-hua. It struck him because he had heard that name many times, even though he didn't know the girl by sight. In his past life, she was the best student of the 6th star, but for now, she looked like a normal teenager. Han Baek-ha said that in 6 months, the cult will conduct a promotion test. The mentor wanted to elevate her student to the highest rank. Hearing this, Southern Sky doubted that she would be able to do so in such a short period of time. However, 6th Star was a first-class master who was an honor to learn from. SEO Woon-hui once again clarified what their argument would be about and what it meant. Han Baek-ha said that the bet was about which student would become the highest-ranked master. The boy and girl looked at each other intently. But what would happen if both or neither of them became masters? 6th Star replied that in that case, they would fight each other. In this way, the winner would be revealed. The young man thought about it. It was risky to accept the bet, but on the other hand, it would be an incentive for him. If Seo Woon-hui wins, he'll gain invaluable experience. But if he loses, Hai Ah-chan will think he's been lured to the 6 Star's side and get angry. The boy feared the consequences of his decision because he suspected that the girl with scarlet hair was higher in status than Han Baek-ha. Standing between two fires was very dangerous. At the same time, Seo Woon-hui realized that he had to succeed in this life. So, it was necessary to take the risk. The young man thanked for the honor and accepted the terms of the bet. Ha Young, standing nearby, was surprised by his decision. When Seo Woon-hui left, 6 Star said that Hai Ah-ken would probably do his best to make his disciple a first-class warrior. When Dam Ye-hua heard that, she panicked. She didn't know that this guy had become an elder's disciple because he had made a fool of himself at the initiation ceremony. Ha Young said carefully that as far as she knew, Seo Woon-hui didn't make a bet if he wasn't sure about something, so it was foolish to underestimate him. However, 6th Star was confident in Dam Ye-hua's talent and her extraordinary abilities. The girl hesitantly promised she was up to the task, though tears glistened in her eyes. It's been 6 months. In the Six Bloods Valley, a real battle had broken out. It was a test for rank advancement. Young warriors full of ambition fought in the ring, demonstrating their skills. Gu Sang-woon stood next to his assistant and watched them with interest. He was pleased to count 37 middle-ranked warriors. It was an impressive result that was encouraging. The 6 disciples were preparing for the test for the top rank. There was no second chance for the losers because Gu Sang-woon remained adamant. The first stage of the test required participants to practice the basic technique known as the Blood Demon Fist. Then they had to group together to demonstrate their teamwork. Those who successfully passed these stages received a low ranking. The middle-ranked warriors had a new challenge ahead of them. They had to learn how to use the internal energy that had been accumulating for 10 years. The task for them was simple, but at the same time, difficult. They had to strike the peace stone with their fist. Only a strong warrior could leave a mark on it. Those who passed this test opened the door to the next stage where new challenges and great trials awaited them. Next came a fight with a middle-ranked warrior. In the fight, the participants had to endure at least 30 attacks demonstrating their resilience and skill. In case of victory, the cadet was awarded a middle rank, which opened new horizons. However, for those who could not pass this test, there were no exceptions. Gu Sang-woon, with a hard expression on his face, advised those who failed the test to channel their anger into practicing their skills to come back next year. Gu Sang-woon's assistant ruthlessly offered to punish the defiant cadet who dared to show weakness, but the commander didn't see the need to do so. There was a cold calculation in his eyes and an understanding that everyone had to go their own way. And at this crucial moment, the test to obtain the highest rank began. Hae Akan and his disciples walked majestically and menacingly towards the arena, their figures inspiring respect and their confident steps showing their strength and preparedness. Gu Sang-woon was astonished. He hadn't expected to see them here. The moment their gazes met, Hae Ah-chan smiled at him with a slight hint of arrogance. The captain stammered and spoke to the elder. He tried to explain that his apprentices would easily get the middle rank, but there was one obstacle. Hei-chan, with an unwavering expression and a shrewd gaze, told him not to beat around the bush, but to say straightforwardly what the matter was. Sodom asked Seo Un-hui with bewilderment and slight irritation if he understood what was just happening. The guy explained that high action students practiced in isolation from everyone else and didn't take any tests. 106 people were tested this year, but more than half of them were low-ranked and were not admitted. Hei Ashan's disciples who were not admitted will be negatively received by the community. Sodom was indignant because she knew what Seo Un-hui had gone through in training with the elder and how much effort he had put into his training. Gu Sang-woon felt pressured by the majority, but Hei Achan didn't care. He stood confidently and calmly as if nothing could shake him. There were other commanders here looking for fighters. Commander Gu Sang-woon gathered his thoughts and resolutely asked the elder's disciples to show off their skills to convince the others of their training. Suddenly, Han Baek-ha walked up to them. Her confident stride and posture commanded respect. She supported Gu Sang-woon's words, emphasizing that he was only trying to abide by the rules that were set for everyone. Dam Ye-hwa came to the battle site with her. Seo Un-hui couldn't help but notice that something had changed in her. He felt an impressive confidence. Seo Un-hui was sure that 6th Star was going to do the same thing as High Action, bypass the rules. The elder watched the situation with interest. His eyes were full of excitement, and he realized that now they had a chance to change the course of events. 6th Star laughingly asked Gu Sang-woon how they should have handled the situation. The captain, feeling the weight of responsibility, pointed at the stone and said that the students needed to confirm the right to take the middle rank test in front of everyone. Han Baek-ha agreed and beckoned Dam Ye-hwa to come closer. The girl looked calm and focused. Seo Un-hui noticed how she had changed since the last time they met. His heart was filled with excitement, and he was curious about how strong she had become. Dam Ye-hwa boldly approached the stone. Her movements were decisive. She gathered all her power using one of the Blood Witch techniques and touched the stone. Everyone around them was astonished when Dam Ye-hwa blazed with scarlet fire. It was a mesmerizing and awe-inspiring sight. Only half a year ago, she was a low-ranked cadet, and now she was clearly demonstrating her excellent skills. It was as if nature itself had yielded to her will. The girl melted the surface of the stone, and her hands seemed to penetrate its flesh, leaving 2 bright imprints. After finishing the task, Dam Ye-hwa walked up to her mentor and proudly said that it was the best she could do. 6th Star turned to Gu Sang-woon and asked him if this was enough to be allowed to enter the next stage. The commander smilingly praised Dam Ye-hwa. He said that she was a really talented student and worthy of going to the next stage. Seo Un-hui was impressed by the girl's strength and determination. Southern Sky advised him to use his internal energy to complete the task. Dam Ye-hwa smiled victoriously and looked at Seo Un-hui with a defiant look. It was like she was teasing him. Seo Un-hui was calculating how much internal energy he would have to expend to complete the task, and his thoughts were preoccupied with it. However, Dam Ye-hwa's ego was hurt again when Seo Un-hui ignored her, and she felt that her efforts were not appreciated. Hei-chan, watching this, mentally sent a message to the guy to give his best, because it wasn't just important to him. Thanks to the blood circulation acceleration technique, Seo Un-hui had learned how to cultivate internal energy at an incredible speed, and now he was ready for anything. Seo Un-hui decided to use 80% of his energy. He concentrated, and his eyes lit up with a blue fire that reflected his inner strength. Clenching his hand into a fist, he penetrated the thickness of the peace stone, feeling the power filling him. With each passing moment, he became more and more confident of his success. The boulder was not as hard as the young man had anticipated, and at that moment, there was an expectation in the air. Everyone present was amazed at the mark this mighty fellow had left on the stone. It was as if his fist had left its mark on history. But suddenly, Seo Un-hui realized that he had overreacted. His fist got stuck in the boulder, causing him to panic. Sodom watched him and tried to be concerned. Her eyes were full of concern, but she didn't know how to help him. Seeing this, Jabek grinned with slight disdain. He decided to break the stone and show this fool how to pass the test. His twin brother began pounding on the peace stone. His blows were full of rage and a desire to tear it to pieces. Even though he had managed to damage the top layer, Seo Un-hui's hand was still sticking inside the stone. He could feel the adrenaline filling him, mixed with anxiety. Suddenly, without saying a word, Woo-hyun sprinted up and hit the rock with his bald, trained head. It was unexpected and even comical. For the first time in the history of the blood cult, the peace stone split in two, and there was silence. It was as if time had stopped. Everyone present was shocked. Their faces expressed bewilderment and admiration at the same time. Hei Achon laughed at the top of his voice, and his laughter rang out like thunder. His disciples were the ones who had rubbed everyone's noses in it, and he felt proud of them. Gu Sangwon was impressed and recommended that they prepare for the middle rank, but Seo Woon Hui objected to him. They came here to be promoted to the highest rank and become captains. His voice was unwavering in its desire and determination. To obtain the highest rank, one had to fight a top-ranked master and withstand 12 of his attacks. Watching the bouts, Sodom noticed that the masters were fighting at half strength. Hae Akon advised the disciples to take their time and see what the masters were capable of. Suddenly, the elder looked at Seo Woon Hui sternly and held his head. Pointing at Han Baek Ha, he asked the boy if he had made a bet with the 6th star. South Sky whispered to the boy that he noticed Han Baek Ha's excitement. Seo Woon Hui didn't expect the elder to talk about betting, so he was confused. However, Han Baek Ha smiled the most luscious smile. It was part of her cunning plan, to sow doubts in Hai Achan about Seo Woon Hui so that he would suspect the disciple of collusion. There's a reason Seo Woon Hui was talking to Ha Young. Hei Achan lifted the young man's head and shook it in the air, asking if they had argued to change his mind. The elder slapped him on the head for Seo Woon Hui's adventurous behavior. With a smile, Hei Achan told his disciple to show what he could do. Captains of the blood cult wore blue belts as a badge of honor. You could become a captain by serving and showing yourself to be a good leader, or by accomplishing some serious mission. But there was another way. Fight 2 high-ranking captains with swords and defeat them in less than 100 blows. There were rumors that Hai Achan's disciple was good at fighting, and everyone was interested in his technique. Sodom and Southern Sky were cheering Seo Woon Hui on before an important fight. He had to show how well he had mastered the Shining Star technique. The young man had to fight the top-ranked warriors, Daejun and Ho Yun. They were giving him disorganizing thoughts. In spite of that, the young man greeted his partners politely. Gu Sangwon announced the start of the fight. Daejun and Ho Yun rushed forward to attack. Seo Woon Hui skillfully defended against the attackers. Southern Sky helped him react in time to the strikes. His opponents were amazed at his ability to block attacks without even turning to look at them. They saw Seo Woon Hui as a worthy warrior. It was not for nothing that he endured Hai Achan's endless beatings. The elder trained his disciples with extreme cruelty. Suddenly, Daejun changed his strategy. He diverted the cadets' attention while Ho Yun used one of his powerful sword techniques against Seo Woon Hui. His sword and the Southern Sky clashed in a strike blazing with green and blue light. An even greater force could be used to respond to the powerful strike. But what if the opponent used the soft sword technique? Seo Woon Hui successfully used his usual techniques. One of his favorites was the slithering sword. His skills amazed his opponents, but they only saw him as a teenager. Underestimating the cadet, Ho Yun lost his guard and was wounded by the short sword. Against Shining Star's advanced technique, none of the cultivators knew any techniques. One of the deadliest techniques of this technique was the Rising Dragon Sword, which Seo Woon Hui had mastered to perfection. After confusing his opponents, he struck first with this powerful strike and then completed his attack with the Meteor Strike. The blade of the Southern Sky Sword was so close to Daejun's face that he saw his reflection in it. Walking over to Ho Yun, the guy asked him to stop the bleeding so he could retrieve his short sword still sticking out of the wound. The warriors lost this fight to the elder's young apprentice and recognized him as an equal. The stunned observers of the fight cheered. Seo Un Shuai was able to defeat top-ranked fighters in just a few minutes, and he didn't even need 100 punches to do so. He couldn't train a disciple to be an excellent swordsman, especially since it was rumored that Seo Un Hui's Dantian had been restored by the healer only half a year ago. How could he master such a complicated technique so quickly? Han Baek Ha, who was watching the fight, was no longer so sure that she would win the bet. Hei Akon's techniques were aimed at increasing the power and physical capabilities of the body, but his disciples' techniques were of a completely different profile. Seo Un Hui was being trained by someone else. The young man approached the elder to pay his respects, and Hai Ashom praised him for his excellent fight. Looking at Dam Yehua, asked Han Baek Ha for permission to take the captaincy test. She was hurt by how easily Seo Eunhui was able to pass the test. The girl hoped to repeat his success. Sixth star let Dam Yehua try her hand at it with the hope of a positive outcome. But unfortunately, the girl overestimated her capabilities and was defeated. Hae Achan and Seo Eunhui watched Jae-beck's fight with tension. The fight was becoming more and more exhausting. Jae-beck, who could barely stand on his feet, continued to fight the two captains as if he had lava in his veins instead of blood. He had all Southern Sky watching the scene sympathetically said how unlucky Jae-beck was. His words echoed in the heart of Hae-chan, who couldn't take his eyes off of his disciple. Her voice sixth, the elder suppressed a laugh and told Hanbek Ha not to try to change the subject. He could feel her doubts about the authorship of the technique becoming more apparent. Folding his arms across his chest and assuming a defensive posture, he defiantly asked if she didn't recognize the technique of the Southern Sky swordsman. Sixth star froze in disbelief. It was impossible because Baho Jungdae was long gone. In her mind, this thought caused a storm of confusion. Hearing this, the cultists instantly suspected that Hae Akon had taken Baho Jungdae's life and taken possession of his valuable records. The elder's anger flared up like a spark in the forest. He shouted that someone had gotten ahead of him and dealt with the Southern Sky swordsman before he could. Seo Eunhui was amazed that Hae Akon had decided to reveal the truth to everyone. The question that the cultists had asked was a fair one, where he could have gotten the records from, but the elder preferred to keep silent, leaving everyone puzzled. Hae Akchan explained that the recordings were incomplete, and so he himself partially refined the technique by adding his own developments. Hanbaek Ha stared questioningly at Hae Achan. Her eyes searched for confirmation. He looked at her and said with a smile that she had understood correctly. Seo Eunhua was the successor to both Hae Achan and Baho Jungdae at the same time. The elder took the young man by the head and proudly showed him off to everyone. Thus, Hae Akon rose above everyone else, earning even more authority and respect as a wise mentor and master. Southern Sky truly appreciated Hae Akchan's contribution to the Shining Star technique, which emphasized the importance of his discoveries and work. At this time, Jae-beck's fight was over. Jae-beck, despite his victory, looked depressed, which raised questions about his inner state. Having been hit on the head by Hae Akchan for almost embarrassing his teacher, he realized that this approach to teaching was part of strict discipline. Seo Eunhui, trying to support Jae-beck, faced his aggression. He mentally conveyed a message to Seo Eunhui that a command battle technique had been used against him. It was much more difficult to resist it. Meanwhile, Sun Woo-hyun was invited to fight. Hae Achan threatened him that if he performed poorly, he would go without food for a long time. Woo-hyun's motivation expressed in his angry facial expression could be a sign that he was ready to fight with full commitment. Woo-hyun was supposed to fight Do Ka-young and Jae-ji. Seo Eunhui watched his comrade with keen interest, his heart pounding with excitement. Against Woo-hyun came a master fistfighter and an experienced swordsman. It seemed that the blood cult didn't need so many captains. Therefore, he was put in a deliberately difficult situation. The disciple of the elder calmly looked at his opponents, thinking about strategy. Gu Sang-woon commanded the fight to begin, and at that second, Woo-hyun swiftly walked right up to Do Ka-young. Woo-hyun clutched his skull with his hands with such force that it felt like it was going to crack. The scream of pain that came out of his opponent's mouth was like thunder. Letting go of his head, Woo-hyun turned around to Chae-ji, who was trembling with fear. His eyes were full of terror. After such a spectacle, Chae-ji himself surrendered without a fight, realizing that he didn't stand a chance. A smile of triumph and relief shone on Woo-hyun's face. He had passed the test and received the coveted rank of captain. His dream had finally become a reality. Seo Eunhui was stunned, unable to believe his eyes. Hae Achan laughed heartily. He was so proud of his disciple that he was overflowing with pride. But Jae-beck was clearly disappointed. His soul was racked with envy and resentment. Bart, who had recently been on his team, had beaten him. Gu Sang-woon confidently led the disciples into the main pavilion of the Six Blood Valley. There was excitement and anticipation in the air. Hanbaek Ha headed there as well. Sodom noticed that one of the students was looking at Seo Eunhui strangely and squinted intriguedly and whispered to him about it. Seo Eunhui turned around and his heartbeat increased. He saw Ha-young. She looked completely different and a light shone in her eyes. Sodom didn't even recognize her at first. It looked like Ha-young's illness had really receded and she looked slim and healthy. Watching this, Sudam joked with a slight smile at how quickly Seo Wun-hui recognized Ha Young, implying that her image had captured his heart. At this moment, Jabek, clearly preoccupied with what was happening, grudgingly asked Hai Achon why they were all going to the main hall. The elder replied that they had the most important part of the task ahead of them. The captains had to recruit a team. They approached the wall on which the signs were attached. The atmosphere around them was tense, and excitement was in the air. The selection ceremony began. Sodom curiously asked what that meant, and Seo Eun-hui explained in detail that what was happening now was the assignment of new warriors to positions. The plaques had the names of the fighters who passed the test. The captains had to rank them. The captains had to take the ones they liked for their team. Seo Eun-hui felt sad when he thought about his past life. He had joined the Blood Wolf Squad because he had been assigned to the Blood Wolf Squad on a residual basis. It was also a kind of competition, but the outcome of the competition would decide a lot. Hai Achan could also choose his own fighters. He was given the right to do it first, and his eyes lit up with excitement. At that moment, everyone was waiting with bated breath to see how the story would unfold. Hai Achan asked what rank of warriors he should start with. He was told that he should start by selecting middle-ranked candidates. There was a tension in the air that could be felt physically. The elder drew his finger across the wall, concentrating on the plaques he needed. The 27 plaques hanging above this line were boldly appropriated by Hai Achan. He shocked everyone with this prank. Han Baek-ha couldn't hold back a gasp of surprise. Her eyes widened in surprise. Sudam and Seo Wun-hui laughed, unable to contain their mirth. Of course, they knew that Hai Achan was a weirdo, but no one had expected such a bold move. The elder, smiling as if nothing had happened, said that he had kindly left 10 fighters for the others. Everyone realized that this was just the beginning of the real fight. Han Baek-ha approached the elder and told him that he couldn't take that many warriors. Hai Achan pretended not to understand what she meant and asked again. There seemed to be a clash of interests. She reminded the elder that once at the council, he had mentioned how difficult it was for him to manage large numbers of people. So she explained that it wouldn't be fair to the others. Hai Achan said that his position had changed since then. Now he intended to nurture his own team of fighters. Since the elder didn't have a single person in his command, he decided to recruit the maximum number of warriors. As Seo Eun-hui watched the faces of all the people present twist with interest, Hai Achan advised those who were dissatisfied to go to their masters, and in turn have them come to him to settle the matter. His gaze was intent on tearing everyone's throats out. Sixth Star had nothing to object to this and gave in. The other commanders also agreed. The elder's intention to recruit his own team had shaken the blood cult. Han Baek-ha had a premonition of an impending split in the cult. Sudam shared with Seo Eun-hui that now there was a great opportunity for him. Since Hai Achan has expressed a desire to build strength, both sides will want him in their ranks. The young man hadn't expected the sword avatar to offer such sound advice. He asked when Sodom had gotten so smart that he was annoyed with her. Southern Sky still didn't understand what Sodom was getting at. In the meantime, the selection of the top-ranked candidates had begun. Gu Sang-woon asked the 6 warriors who had passed the test to step forward. The higher-ranked warriors could choose their own commanders. To begin, Seo Eun-hui watched the ceremony with curiosity. Now everything depended on the eloquence of the commanders. Suddenly, Seo Eun-hui heard the voice of an elder in his head. He told him to make a speech in his place. The young man had to do his best to convince the best warriors to join them. Seo Eun-hui doubted that he would be able to perform well. Seo Eun-hui realized that he had to publicize his teacher as best as possible, although it was quite difficult considering the daily beatings. Gu Sang-woon asked the commanders to begin the presentation. Seo Eun-hui was about to go up to the podium to speak in place of Hai Ak-jong, but he was suddenly stopped by Commander Cha and said that there was a strict hierarchy here. Seo Eun-hui's place was at the end of the line. The boy Seo Eun-hui began to think of a way for him to lure all 6 top-ranked fighters to his side. Now, suddenly, Seo Eun-hui heard the elder's voice in his head again. Hai Achan was scolding him for letting his disciple put himself at the back of the line. Seo Eun-hui turned his head and saw that Hai Achan was literally burning with rage. The disciple assured him that he could make the best of the situation, but the elder threatened him with violent reprisals if none of the warriors chose him. At that time, Commander Sung Pil-chung spoke on the podium. He represented 3rd Elder Gu Jian, who was strong in poisons and knew all poisoning techniques. He was followed by the other 9 commanders. They all said roughly the same thing. Sudam and Seo Un-hui were even bored. Southern Sky noticed that all the commanders were eyeing one single candidate. Everyone wanted to get him on their team. Among the top-ranked warriors, there was one with a serious, impenetrable face. His name was Zhou Sungwan. He was like a rough diamond, waiting for a talented master. During the top-ranked test, he won with only 16 lunges. Seo Un-hui thought he had heard this young man's name before. He seemed to have known him in the past. At that second, Commander Na Shim-hyun, who represented First Star Jang Ryong, came to the podium. Seo Un-hui noticed the interest in Zhou Sungwan's eyes. The captain wasn't going to talk about the First Star because everyone already knew that the elders were very respected people in the blood cult. Na Shim-hyun said that he and First Star had been fighting on the front lines near Gay Peak all this time and would continue to do so. Seo Un-hui saw Zhou Sungwan's eyes glisten. Apparently, this place meant a lot to him. The boy remembered that Gay Peak was near the beggar sect. Now he realized where he had heard that man's name. He was a spy from a beggar sect. It was for those who wanted to learn martial arts but couldn't afford it. Sodom was surprised to learn that Zhou Sungwan was from an orthodox sect. In his past life, he was exposed after only half a year and immediately took his life. However, he managed to get a lot of valuable information. Sudam asked if Seo Un-hui was going to help him. But Zhou Sungwan's only goal seems to be to join the First Star. Seo Un-hui gave up on that, except that Hei Achon mentally told him not to dare to miss out on such an excellent fighter. The elder saw Zhou Sungwan's outstanding ability during the test. He should definitely be brought to Hei Achon's side. Seo Un-hui didn't know what to do in this situation. The elder didn't realize that he wanted a spy on his team. Finally, it was Seo Un-hui's turn to speak. Hei Achon had been waiting for him eagerly. Jae Beck chuckled at Seo Un-hui, anticipating how he would embarrass himself at the presentation and get the elder for it. Jae Achon gave him an angry look and sensed something wrong. It was Seo Un-hui who stood out among all the students, so he asked him to speak instead of Jae Beck. The elder beckoned Ja Beck to come closer. He immediately changed his face and began to apologize without knowing why. When Ja Beck approached him, he was immediately kicked in the head in front of everyone, which shocked those present at the scene. Meanwhile, Seo Un-hui went up to the stage. He was nervous, but he had a rough outline in his head. The young man hoped that he would be able to attract at least one candidate. He gave his name and said he was just an ordinary guy like them. Seo Un-hui pointed to Hei Achon and said he was his disciple. He was very fortunate to have the honor of being apprenticed to an elder. The crowd was perplexed. Was he really bragging about his position now? Everyone was intrigued. During the presentation, Seo Un-hui glanced at Zhou Sungwan, but not a single muscle on his face flinched. He seemed to be firmly convinced of his choice. Seo Un-hui explained that he understood the warrior's throwing behavior because he had recently been a cadet himself. But at the same time, he didn't see the point in describing the positive aspects of his master, just like Na Shim-hyun didn't see the point of it. Hei Achon tensed up when he heard that, because he was very ambitious. He squeezed poor Jae Beck's head with all his might. Seo Un-hui urged everyone to turn around and look at the elder and the 2 boys beside him. Jae Beck and Woo Hyun were eloquent examples of what an outstanding mentor Hei Achon was. The warriors looked at them. Seo Un-hui said that only a year ago they were weak cadets, but today they were already captains. Seo Un-hui drew the attention of the audience to such a short period of time in which Hei Achon's students had achieved such heights. The top-ranked fighters pondered over his words. They had all seen the twins, and Seo Un-hui passed the test and were impressed. But the other commanders were not pleased. They felt that it was not to the students' credit. Gu Sang-woon called for silence because Seo Un-hui had not finished his speech yet. Everyone listened. Sodom shrieked irritably as those bastards dared to interrupt Seo Un-hui's performance. But the guy realized that they felt threatened. He agreed that it was Hei Achon's merit. Their success was the fruit of the elder's labor. But there was something else. Seo Un-hui asked, pointing out that Hei Achon only had 3 students. There was confusion in the air. The captains chuckled amongst themselves as they called their group small but proud. Only Seo Un-hui didn't pay attention to the ridicule anymore. He said their ranks were the smallest in the cult. This condition was favorable to newcomers. Those who would join them now would become the founders of a large faction. The other cult heads were certainly magnificent. But under their command, warriors would have to go a long way to promotion from the bottom. That fact was undeniable. Seo Un-hui asked the candidates what they would choose, to stand at the tail of the dragon or to lay the foundation at the head. At the end of his fiery speech, the young man smiled and said that their squad was like a small family. At this moment, Heya-chan's stern face changed to a smiling face, and he embraced Jae Baek and Woo Hyun. In his mind, he told them to smile or he would tear their mouths open. The twins dared not disobey. The top-ranked fighters looked at them with interest. They believed that this was the kind of relationship between mentor and apprentice that could be considered healthy. Sudam laughed because she knew that Seo Un-hui was lying. It was hard to call them a family. It was time to choose. The first candidate, named Li Gyu, immediately joined Hai Akon's squad. Seo Un-hui welcomed him gladly and congratulated him on becoming a part of their family. They have one warrior now. Heya-chan laughed happily. He was clearly pleased with Seo Un-hui's performance. A second top-ranked warrior approached Gu Sang-woon to voice his decision. Seo Un-hui really hoped that he would choose their team too. You could see that the fighter was hesitant. The other captains had gotten into his head and insisted on choosing their faction. Seo Un-hui realized that his chances were not high since the best blood cult captains were present. Suddenly, he heard his name. The top-ranked warrior, Ha Mun-chan, also expressed his desire to learn from Hai Ak-chan and asked to join their team. Jae Baek and Woo Hyun continued to smile, hoping that they would get less beatings now. The next candidate was Jo Sung-won. He was firmly on his way to the squad under first star. Seo Un-hui realized that this one fighter was worth 5. However, he didn't know how his presence in the team would affect them. Each of the captains wanted to get their hands on Jo Sung-won. He was like a glass of precious wine with poison in it. Meanwhile, he approached Na Shim-hyun and was about to swear an oath to him. Seo Un-hui kept his eyes on him. At that second, Heya-chan got into his head and ordered him to lure Jo Sung-won to their side. He didn't care how he did it. Seo Un-hui had no choice. He didn't want to incur Heya-chan's wrath. There was only one way to get Jo Sung-won's attention. He knew better than anyone what a spy's greatest fear was. Every spy fears being discovered.